Welcome into another edition of the Going Deep Buffalo podcast. This is your host, Kevin Siracuse. As I am by myself tonight, Kevin Messeri is unfortunately unavailable to join us tonight, but I do have WROC Sports Director Thad Brown joining me at about 9:45 as we are going to discuss the Bills season up to this point and then what needs to change moving forward, because after that game and really the last 2 weeks, a lot needs to change. So a lot of improvements need to be made here. So Thad is going to join me for that. I'm going to open up the show and talk about what happened in that Texans game. We don't need to harp on it too much, but I just want to put a bow on that. And then we're going to preview this upcoming matchup on Monday night versus Aaron Rodgers and the Robert Saleh-less New York Jets after the Jets made that decision to part ways with the head coach who was there for 3.5 years, or should I say Aaron Rodgers made that decision. And now Aaron Rodgers is the interim head coach, even though they say that the defensive coordinator is. But either way, we're going to preview that upcoming matchup. And like I said, Thad will be joining me soon. First of all, I want to thank our sponsors for sponsoring tonight's show. The Summit Center doing some great work with autism, and also Larson-Timko Funeral Home and Dave Dengler. Larson-Timko Funeral Home offering 100% fully guaranteed price and pre-arranged funeral plans with live streaming available. You can give them a call at 716-679-9000 or visit their website at larsontimkofuneralhome.com. So, before we get into football, there's been a lot discussed here, and we have a lot to discuss tonight, obviously. Good evening, Sandra, and everyone else who is joining me on this later broadcast. I know we are an hour later than we normally are, but Thad was busy earlier, and I figured if I was by myself, I was like, you know what? Let's just push it back to 9. I've been watching the Yankees for a little bit and obviously getting ready for the show. So I wanted to start by talking about a little bit of baseball because we're so football-centric here. But I want to take a few minutes and talk about the playoffs because, I'm a Yankees fan. And last I checked, it was 2-2 in the 7th inning. Aaron Judge was up to bat. The playoffs are great so far. We have the Yankees and the Royals. Then you have the Tigers and the Guardians. The Tigers won today. And let me tell you right now, if it is Yankees and Cleveland for the ALCS, I am there in a minute. Because I went a couple of years ago. I think it was the ALDS. And that was an electric atmosphere. I got heckled pretty bad, but you know what? I'm going to go back again because I'm not going to back down to those Cleveland fans. So if that is the case, that would be an insane ALCS. And then you go to the other side, and the Mets just won tonight against the Phillies. So they won that series, and they are in their first NLCS since 2015 when they played the Kansas City Royals eventually in the World Series. So hopefully that's not another matchup that we're going to be watching here because that means the Yankees would lose. And then tonight, you have the Dodgers and the Padres. I believe they play tonight. I know the Padres won 6-5 last night. But, all these divisional series here, it's just so good. And then, obviously, you have the Yankees and the Royals as a one non-divisional series. But, man, I'm just really enjoying these playoffs so far. So if you are a baseball fan, feel free to comment in here because, I'll pull up your comments if you want to discuss a little baseball. But we have a lot to talk about for the Bills because there's a little bit of turmoil going on right now. And then there was that lengthy injury report today. It was the unofficial injury report because today was technically a Tuesday, so they're off day because they have that extra day going into Monday Night Football. So we'll get the official injury report when the Bills report it tomorrow. But maybe Thad will know a little bit more just based on what he saw at practice because James Cook is on the injury report. Curtis Samuel's back on the injury report. Both of those guys were classified by Sean McDermott as dealing with foot/toe injuries. So I'm thinking that that's more precautionary than anything, but the Bills can't afford any more injuries at this rate. So we'll talk to Thad about that and just about the rest of the overall landscape of what we have to deal with here. Because as it says in the description here on the YouTube page, the AFC East is up for grabs. As crazy as that sounds, the Bills are in a position where if they lose, they're going to fall to 3-3, 3 straight losses. The Jets have lost 2 in a row, but if they win, they go to 3-3. They get the tiebreaker over the Bills, and they're in first place in the AFC East. And just a couple of weeks ago, after that Jacksonville game, it almost seemed like the Bills could walk away with the division. And obviously, you know that it's a long season, so no one actually thought that the Bills, maybe some people thought that the Bills were just going to run away with it. But I knew that the Jets and even the Dolphins could claw their way back in. And especially looking at all those divisional round matchups towards the end of the season, there's a lot of football left to be played. So it's kind of crazy to think that the winner of Monday night's game will be in first place in the AFC East. And then the reports are that Tua will be back, I think, week 8. I saw that Drake May's starting for the Patriots. So again, a lot can happen here. And a lot did happen with the Bills over the last 2 weeks because after that Jacksonville game, they look like a Super Bowl contender. And I think they still can get back to that point. I know they were playing lesser teams, but Arizona's not that bad. Jacksonville, I don't think is that bad. I think they're going to start to get a little bit good. I just picked up Tank Bigsby today in one of my fantasy leagues. So I think they're starting to find their footing. If the Dolphins do in fact get a healthy Tua back, you don't know what they're going to be about. So I don't think that these teams were as bad as some people have made it out to be. Or it's like, oh, well, the Bills just had these 3 cupcakes. Okay, well, maybe they didn't play to their full potential, but I don't think they're bad teams overall. So all that to say, I think the Bills can still get back to that dominant performance that we saw those first 3 weeks, but a lot needs to change here. So we are going to get into it tonight. I want to start with how the game finished on Sunday, because now we've had some time to decompress and kind of let it sit there and realize what exactly happened. And I recorded Cuse's Corner, if you saw that on either my YouTube channel or this Built in Buffalo YouTube channel. And I was all over Sean McDermott, and rightfully so, because it was another late game blunder. And we've seen this time and time again where this game management and clock management comes back to bite Sean McDermott. But I'm here to say tonight that I'm not as mad with Sean McDermott because I said this when I was recording, and then I started to think about it more over the last couple of days. And I was like, really, he put the ball in his best player's hands. He let Josh Allen try to go win that game. And part of me is okay with that. But the part that I'm not okay with is it was low percentage plays. So if they would have ran the ball 3 straight times, like a lot of people are saying, I guarantee people would have been saying on Twitter or just social media in general, calling into the WGR saying, why did you take it out of Josh Allen's hands? This coach is he's so conservative. I want him to be aggressive. Let Josh Allen try to go win the game. You have 32 seconds. Try to go get in field goal range. Tyler Bass can make a 50-plus yarder. Just give it to Josh. So the opposite happened. And, well, actually, that was a scenario that did happen where he put it in Josh Allen's hands. But the problem that I have is those were low percentage plays. So you go down the boundary with Keon Coleman, nothing. You throw up a prayer to Mac Hollins, nothing. And then you have a little bit of a crosser from Curtis Samuel. I do like that route, but by then it was too late. And they only used, 12 seconds a clock? 15 seconds? So the Bills got out on their own 3-yard line with 32 seconds left. And by the time they punted back, it was 16 seconds. So, okay, I guess I just did the math. 16 seconds. And then with the hang time of the punt, Sam Martin booted it away down the field. Robert Woods, who I completely forgot is in Houston and still punt returning, but Robert Woods caught it. By the time he returned it and got tackled, there were 7 seconds left. So if you make them use your timeouts, you let Sam Martin get a little bit more room. And instead of Houston starting on Buffalo's 46, maybe they start on their own 46 and they don't have that timeout to get in field goal range. So either way, you needed to make Houston use those timeouts. But maybe we should take a step back from saying, I'm so done with Sean McDermott. This is all his fault. He's such an idiot. I think I like the idea, but the problem is, again, you had nothing open over the middle of the field. Everything it looked like a Ken Dorsey offense, just running vertical straight down the field. And maybe some of that is Josh Allen's fault because maybe he just tried to be that gunslinger when we didn't need him to be. And I think Joe Brady needs a lot of that responsibility as well, because why didn't he design something easier to move the chains, right? Like you at least want to get that first down. You want to keep the clock moving as much as you can, make them use their timeouts. So when it's all said and done, Sean McDermott is a head coach. He needs to take accountability, which he did. But at the same time, maybe it's not as big of a problem as we originally thought for those reasons that I just laid out. Does Sean McDermott need to improve? Oh, 100%. There have been so many moments where we've seen this, whether it's 13 seconds, which a lot of people have been talking about now. You have 13 seconds, 12 men on the field against Denver. now this. And there have just been so many other different moments sprinkled in there where people are just at their wits' end and saying, you know what? I can't do this anymore. This is not going to be the one to get us over the hump. I'm not there yet. I mean, the season is far from over. And like I just opened up the show with, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how Sean McDermott was a defensive mastermind. I know, defensive mastermind. We're not saying that he's a mastermind of a head coach when it comes to clock management and game management. But we were all over the Bills saying, oh my God, this looks like a Super Bowl team. They're 3-0. Josh Allen's the MVP. And now within not even 2 weeks, people are jumping off the wagon. So I'm not here to say that Sean McDermott needs to get fired. Maybe at the end of the season, we can say, okay, well, maybe we need to start thinking about having some different conversations here. But Sean McDermott's going nowhere. So we don't even need to waste our time talking about that here. So let me pull up a few comments before I get into more of my thoughts. So John, good to see you in here again, John. He says, my biggest concern for the Bills is Ed Oliver and his injury. These soft tissue injuries, those are very concerning because those are just nagging. And the Bills were so healthy. And I'll just say it now. I don't mean to bring up 13 seconds again, but that is why that game will always haunt me, because the Bills were so healthy, like peculiarly healthy, and they just let it slip away. Like, even if they get back in that moment, if they get back in that situation, I doubt that they're going to be as healthy as they were for that game. And the fact that they couldn't close the deal, it just eats away at me, man. It eats away. So I agree. This injury is concerning. Hopefully it's not going to be too long term. If I remember correctly, didn't he do it in practice? I'll have to ask Thad, but I remember it just kind of popped up as of late. So we'll see how he's trending. Hopefully it's not anything where they got to put him on short-term IR or anything. We'll talk about the other injuries as well, because like I said, Curtis Samuel and James Cook, those are concerning. The fact that Terrell Bernard is back, that's good. Taron Johnson's trending in the right direction. Khalil Shakir, though, I haven't mentioned him yet. That's a concerning one right there, because we saw what this passing offense was. Now, I think that's a good segue because, and I'll get back to these comments as we go too, but I want to talk about this passing game. We have a few more minutes before Thad comes on, and I think that this is just as big of a problem, if not bigger, because the fact that it was such a stark contrast from week 3 to week 5, and the fact that these wide receivers cannot get open. They just seem to lack the ability to separate and make it easier for Josh. That is very concerning right there. No doubt, the game management and clock issues are concerning with McDermott, because you feel like even if the Bills can get past that in the regular season and they can kind of mask it because you have Josh Allen, you have a strong defense, it's like, okay, cool. We won the division and now we won the first playoff game. We won the wild card round, but can you get over that hump in the divisional round? And that's when you feel like it's going to come back to bite the Bills, right? Because I'm right there with you. I feel the same way, where it's like, what happens if we get back in the divisional round and Sean McDermott is put in a tough spot? There's 25 seconds left and their offense has to do X, Y, and Z. Can we trust McDermott, Brady, and Allen to put it all together? And I can't say that I'm confident right now, just because I need to see more of it. So that is very concerning, of course, but it's also very concerning because you might not even get there if you don't have a passing game. And the fact that Josh Allen isn't even near the top in the leaderboards in passing yards. Now, granted, you don't need to be at the top, right? So Geno Smith, I believe, is leading the league in passing right now. I'm not saying that Josh Allen has to be first, but he doesn't even have 1,000 yards right now. And when you look at the stats here, the Bills' passing offense as a whole, as I am pulling it up right here, but their passing is 25th in the league. So the yardage is just down in general this year. And I think it comes back to the fact that their wide receivers cannot separate. And sure, Josh Allen, let's just start right there. Did not play a good game at all. Sure, he made some plays, but 9 of 30, that was one of his worst games ever. Joe Brady, he also deserves a lot of the blame, because it was a masterpiece what he did to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then the last 2 weeks, it looks like he's in over his head. So the first 3 weeks, Brady was in his bag. I mean, that dude was cooking. And then the last 2 weeks, it looks like he's in over his head. And something that Dan Orlovsky brought up on One Bills Live yesterday, which I thought this is a great point, and I know Chris Brown has been talking about it too. So I don't want to give all the credit to Dan, but he was saying to Brownie and Tasker that the Bills need to get back to running pre-snap motion and play action because they got away from it these last 2 weeks. And I don't get why they did that because it was just working so well to their advantage. And when you do that, it throws the defense off because you put a guy like Curtis Samuel in motion, you don't know exactly what he's going to do or where he's going to go. So that gives Josh that extra time to kind of scan the field, see what the defense is doing, and then you go after the spot that you want to go to. And then with play action, I mean, come on, Josh Allen in play action, he's such a dual threat quarterback. You can use his arm or his legs to your advantage. So the fact that the Bills have gotten so predictable, that's just very puzzling to me because I'm a big believer in if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So it wasn't broke. Why'd Brady try fixing it? So I think that's key right there. That's what I want to see from this offense moving forward. But okay, now look at this because this is still bothering me. I talked about this on Sunday, but we definitely need to talk about it again because this is just putrid. This is ugly. This is a box score that the Bills had against the Texans. And when you look, Keon Coleman, 1 catch for 49 yards and a touchdown. So he had 5 targets, was only able to catch 1 of those. Dalton Kincaid, 2 for 36 on 6 targets. I'll just say right now, he is not playing like a first-round pick. Mac Hollins is the boundary receiver right now outside of Keon Coleman, getting way too many snaps, in my opinion. And, I mean, is that supposed to be the Gabe Davis replacement? So I feel like that's kind of run its course. He had 6 targets, which was tied with Kincaid for the team lead. He was only able to haul in 2 of those for 27 yards. And we saw what happened when Allen tried to go deep. They just did not have that connection. You go down the box score here. James Cook, 2 for 17 on 3 targets. I mean, that's fine because he had 82 rushing yards on 20 carries. So I like what Brady's been able to do with Cook. Ray Davis had a catch for 4 yards. But here's my problem. This is probably the biggest problem right here. Marquez Valdes-Scantling on 3 targets had 0 catches for 0 yards. Curtis Samuel, 4 targets, 1 catch, no yards. He had 1 rush for -1 yards. So he was putting up Reggie Bush numbers. And if you notice, Dawson Knox is not even on the box score here. And I think that is also very concerning. So I've talked about MVS, Curtis Samuel, and Dawson Knox each of the last couple of weeks here. But like we need to keep talking about this because Knox signed that big extension. Now, granted, he did take that pay cut. The Bills shaved some money off. But if you look, he is still the 13th highest paid tight end in the league based on average annual value. So based on that, he's making $9.8 million. His cap hit is 7.7. And he has 3 catches for 30 yards through 5 games. MVS, he has 2 catches for 26 yards. So he's averaging, 5 yards a game? Now, I was looking at his stats earlier, and this guy, he's not going to go for 1,000, right? But he averaged in his first 6 years in the league between the Packers and the Chiefs, he was averaging 525 yards per season. And I think for what the Bills signed him for, it was a 1-year deal, $2.25 million, worth up to 4.5. So a little bit of money, but nothing too crazy. I think if you could get 500 or 600 yards out of MVS, he could be that field stretcher, right? Why can't he run those deep routes instead of Mac Hollins? You got to find ways to utilize these guys. And one more thing I'll say, because we have Thad Brown here in the background, so I'll bring him on momentarily. But Curtis Samuel, 3 years, $24 million, worth up to $30 million. So his AAV is $8 million per year. And the fact that we are nowhere near being close to having that chemistry between Brady, Allen, and Samuel, that is also very concerning because how hard is it to get this guy going? I tweeted a clip earlier last week just showing what he was able to do. It was just a 40-second clip with what he did in Washington with Carson Wentz as his quarterback. And I said, if he could do this with Carson Wentz and be that explosive, then there is no reason why he can't be doing this with Josh Allen. So I'm going to ask Dad about this toe injury because, has it been nagging him that much to the point where they only throw to him behind the line of scrimmage? I mean, come on, you got to be able to get him more involved than that. So I'll go through the comments here. I know I said I was going to pull up a few of those. So while we do that, I'll bring Thad on. And there he is. So we have Thad Brown, the sports director out in Rochester, News 8 WROC. Yeah, thank you very much for joining me tonight. I know it was kind of a crazy day for both of us, but appreciate you for carving some time out here.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for having me on, man. And my apologies for being late. Dad stuff came up. My daughter plays varsity volleyball for one of the high schools here in Rochester, and unfortunately, not only did they start late, but then they went 5 sets. Fortunately, my daughter's team won, so I'm feeling pretty good about that right now. But volleyball is the one high school sport where when they go overtime or they go 4 or 5 sets, that thing can go late. So this is why I am here significantly after you have already begun. My apologies for that.
Oh, that's right. I started a little bit later anyways because I worked all day and I was trying to get my notes ready, and then I had the Yankees game on in the background. So like I said, I think we both had a bit of a busy day, but appreciate all the live fans in here. I know we started a little bit later than normal, but I figured once we get it fired up, people will see, and once you build it, they will come, right?
I like to think so. We'll have to keep the conversation going strong for that to happen, but I appreciate the hope at least.
I got to ask you, are you a baseball fan? I don't know if I've ever seen an MLB tweet from your account.
Yeah, I'm a Brewers fan by team, but yeah, now I'll tell you this. I grew up liking baseball. I played a ton of baseball when I was a kid. And bigger picture, there really isn't a sport I don't like. At some point or another doing this job, I've followed or been interested in all of them. I'm kind of down on baseball mainly because as a Brewers fan, I kind of feel like the economics of the game have made it tough for you to be a fan of a small market team. If you're a Pittsburgh fan or a Cincinnati fan or I know Cleveland's doing really well this year. It's really tough for those teams to win championships when you're down 40, 50, $100 million of payroll against the LAs and Phillies and New Yorks of the world. So because of that, it's hard for me to get too into baseball. And again, Brewers, now they're a well-run organization. It's awesome. They've been to the playoffs 6 of the last 7 years, but they don't really do anything in the postseason. And my opinion is that a lot of it has to do with the fact that when you get to that level, you just don't have the resources some of these other teams do. So my baseball interest has waned, but, in my job as sports director here in WRC in Rochester, I certainly pay attention. I know who's winning and who some of the top players are and what's going on. So I'm certainly into it. I got the Yankee game on right here too.
I know. I usually don't have the TV on just because I have the tendency to get distracted. I mean, that goes back to when I was in school. Like a lawnmower would go by and be like, "Oh, what's going on outside?" So I usually try to keep the TV off, but I was like, "All right, it's playoffs. I got to see what's going on here." Last I saw, it was 2-2. I did a good job. I was probably on for about 20 minutes before you joined. I did not look at the TV once. So is it still 2-2?
Do you want to know what the update is or no?
3-2. Okay, I couldn't wait any longer.
I think Stanton went yard in the 8th. So it's 3-2. Royals are just starting the bottom of the 8th right now.
Well, before I came on, Stanton actually stole a base, and I was like, "That's weird."
He's having a game. For a guy that you can't always trust to be clutch. So far, we're only 8.5 innings through, but he is basically winning this game for the Yankees by himself.
One more thing I'll say real quick: do you know that Giancarlo Stanton, formerly Mike Stanton at the time, played in Jamestown here?
Did he really?
Yeah.
That's one of the cool things about minor league baseball. In Western New York, we don't have a major league team here, but between Buffalo, Batavia back in the day, Binghamton, Jamestown, Auburn, Rochester, there's a ton of places where guys have been through, and even this year, we had who is the Yankee ace? I should know. I'm just blanking here. Garrett Cole was in town, in Rochester for a game. So it is fun to be able to talk. I have the distinction of I was in the seats in Rochester for Aaron Judge's final AAA home run. So I think that's kind of cool. Yeah, not bad.
2016, right?
If you say so, that's fine with me. I just know I watched it. So, and he was big and hit it far then too.
Well, I saw him and Gary Sanchez in Buffalo, I think that same year before he got called up, because those were like the two big prospects. And to be honest, I wasn't really impressed. I'm like, okay. What's the big deal with these guys? Like, I know it's just one game, but come on, show me something. Well, Judge has done that and then some.
For sure. I mean, in another era, we'd be talking about, watching him chase homer records. If it weren't for Barry Bonds, the last 2 years would have been Judge watch, every day of the year just about. So it's been fun.
Yeah, so Stanton played for the Jammers years ago when they were affiliated with the Marlins. So I don't remember if I remember seeing him and being like, "Oh, this is Mike Stanton." But Marcell Ozuna was a guy who I think he hit 2 bombs at a game that I was at. And my dad never all right, we got to pay attention to this guy. And sure enough, now, actually, Dan Fates would know about this because he's a big Braves guy.
Ozuna's been great too. And it's fun to tell those stories about the guys you used to watch or watch back in the day. If you want to kill some time later, I got a weird Jose Mesa baseball story, but it's not here or there for what we're talking about tonight.
Well, that being said, so getting into the Bills now, which is the reason why we brought you on tonight, I was talking about the injury report, and I think maybe that's a place to start. So were you at practice today?
Yes, it was.
Okay, yeah, because I did see that clip. So before we get into, what's transpired over the last couple of weeks and moving ahead, looking ahead to the Jets game here, what's the latest with this injury report? Because I saw James Cook was on there today. Curtis Samuel is on there. Now, this is unofficial because today was essentially like a Tuesday. So we just went based on what McDermott told you guys. Is that more just precautionary? I saw they were on the bikes. They were kind of walking around the offense. So it looked like they're part of the game plan. Do you think they're just trying to stay active and say, all right, we have that extra day. We don't need to force it?
Yeah, no, it wasn't the veteran rest day. Sean McDermott said that the injury for both guys was foot/toe. And I saw a clip for James Cook, the catch he made that was just barely out of bounds. He does slam his foot toe first into the turf. And there's a still frame of the foot being bent at an uncomfortable looking angle. So I think the injuries are a real thing. But yeah, he was on the bike. He was hanging out with his position group during practice. And over the last few weeks, when Taron Johnson or Terrell Bernard have been missing games, those guys are nowhere to be seen on the field. So the fact that Samuel and Cook were both not only on the field, but with their position groups, I think tells me that this was more precaution than real concern. We'll find out for sure tomorrow. If Cook is not a full practice tomorrow, then I would start to get nervous. But he looked like a guy who was probably going to play on Sunday, and Samuel too.
Okay, well, that's good. So what about Taron Johnson? Is he trending in the right direction?
I mean, I think so, but slowly. Second week in a row on a Wednesday, we've talked to him about his injury, and he keeps saying getting better. He was adamant last week that he is going to listen to his body and doesn't want to come back too soon. And I even brought up to him, like, you can do damage here in October you don't need to be doing. He kind of nodded his head. Obviously that's a true statement. It doesn't really give anything away with his injury, but he's missed 4 games already, which means that, in terms of roster management, the Bills made a mistake not putting him on injured reserve. Not a ridiculous, like this is a fireable offense type of mistake. But if he was going to miss 4 games, I think they would have wanted to fill the roster spot with someone else. He still was in the red jersey today, non-contact, which is what he had on last week. So there's certainly progress, but I think right this second, he's still a question mark for Monday.
Now, Terrell Bernard is back. I mean, we saw him play, made that incredible interception where he essentially covered 2 players in one play. I think he was covering Diggs at first, and then he went back to cover the tight end. Was that it?
He actually, we talked to him about this after the game and had a great explanation. He said coaches had told him all week, look, the Texans are going to run a play where they run a tight end straight down the middle of the field, down the seam. But they love to run the dig behind it. So the tight end clears out deep, and then the receiver, Diggs in this case, will run an in route behind the tight end at maybe 5 or 10 yards shorter. And the idea from the offense's point of view is if you can drag that linebacker deep enough and run the receiver in behind him, he's going to be open. And that's what C.J. Stroud thought he had. But Bernard said that coaches had drilled it into him to look for it, and he made an amazing play. I mean, this is elite, high-level linebacker work to be on the tight end, and not only to recognize the dig route coming, but then to also get into position, get your head around, and make the catch. I mean, you saw the linebacker for Houston earlier in the game when Josh Allen donated the guy an interception, and he couldn't make the catch. Bernard makes the catch. So that was a absolutely ridiculous play. And, for a guy last year, I know a lot of people loved him last year, and I thought he was fine, not great, a developing player. This was a great play. This was a Fred Warner, first team all-pro level play from Bernard in his first game back.
Yeah, that was incredible. Just the fact that he had not only the instincts, but also the athleticism and just the wherewithal. I mean, credit to, I think it was Al Holcomb, right? Who was showing that during the film study. Yeah. So, I mean, those are plays that you love to see, because for as much as we talk about these guys watching film and trying to look at the tape, that's a cliche from McDermott, right? Like, got to look at the tape. Well, this time they actually looked at the tape and it came back to help them. And I'm sure the tape has helped them multiple times before, but just the fact that it had such an immediate impact at such a crucial point of the game, I thought that was pretty cool.
I think that the look at the tape thing can be a cliche. There are some times when things are so obvious you don't need to look at the tape, but there have been enough times when you rewatch a game and see something new or see something you thought happened a particular way that it actually lean a different way. Like, for example, one of the things I saw from this game, we all left this game thinking, wow, the receiver position is a problem. But rewatching it, Josh Allen was a pretty big problem in this game too. So I'd never, when the coach says it, although me as a reporter, I'm as frustrated as you guys are because I feel like they're just avoiding the question. There are plenty of opportunities where the tape does reveal something that makes not talking about that thing worth it on a Sunday night.
Now, moving down the injury report here. So Taylor Rapp did clear concussion protocol. So he was out there practicing. Obviously, they didn't release the designation, but would you say he was a full participant? Did it look like he was doing most of the things again?
Yeah, no red jersey. I thought he was, I don't want to say 100%, but I'd be stunned if he doesn't play Sunday or Monday.
Okay. Oh, and I think I forgot to mention this. When I brought up Bernard, it was because, did I hear that he had a red non-contact jersey on today?
Yeah, he did. So did Mac Hollins. And although that was curious, very rarely does a guy wear the red jersey, then not wear it in practice, play, and then have it again unless there was some sort of re-injury. But Sean McDermott did not bring up Terrell Bernard at all in his pre-practice injury report. So I don't know what to make of that. He looked fine, so we'll wait and see tomorrow.
And then two more that I have, and then you can fill us in on the rest. Khalil Shakir and Ed Oliver. We opened up the show, and there was a comment saying that it's very concerning with the Ed Oliver injury. And I said that it is very concerning. I know that, like, with hamstrings, you would like to think that you can be back sooner rather than later. It's not like an ACL or anything. But I feel like the reason for me why it's so concerning is that these are soft tissue injuries, and the Bills are just getting so many injuries this year, last year, and maybe even a little bit of 2022, when 2020, 2021, they were so healthy. And that's why 13 seconds will always come back to haunt me. And I'm sure a lot of other fans, because I'm not sure if they will ever have that situation again at full health. Like, and sure, they might have a situation, but look at last year. They had to pull AJ Klein out of his RV. So the fact that they had a full starting roster and they still blew it against the Chiefs in 13 seconds, I don't need to talk about it anymore. But going back to that Oliver. So is this something that we should be concerned with? Do you think he'll be back sooner rather than later? Is there a chance that he suits up Monday night?
Did not see him on the practice field at all. Did see him in the locker room afterward. The fact that he wasn't available at all or on the field at all certainly is a concern. And I think, to your point about soft tissue injuries, although, a hamstring is not like an ACL to where it's, you're done for the year. Those are things that can linger if you don't treat them with kid gloves. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills do it. I know Monday night's game is huge, but it is still just week 6. And even if the Bills lose and are 3-3, they're no worse than tied for first place in the division. So if the choice is pushing an Oliver to be ready Monday night and then risking him to be an issue for the next 11 weeks or sitting him for next week, maybe even the week after, to have him good for the second half of the season, I don't think there's really a question for that one. And then just for the Khalil Shakir update, now Shakir was on the field, did ride the bike with Samuel and Cook, did some stuff off to the side. You could tell from watching him, and I posted a video at my Twitter feed, Thad Brown, my X feed, Thad Brown 7, that it still is clear he's not comfortable. There's some uncertainty, but I also saw some pretty good looking reps. So, I was going to assess him right now. I'd say totally on the fence, 50-50. But he was not a participant in practice at all. And that will have to improve a lot between now and Monday for him to play.
Well, I knew that Khalil Shakir was a vital piece of this offense going into the season, but I didn't really realize how vital he is, because the fact that the Bills just did nothing on Sunday. Now, sure, Allen made some plays here and there, and they got it together in the second half. But the fact that he was hobbled against the Ravens for most of that game, I would say, and then didn't play against the Texans. I mean, it looks like Khalil Shakir is the new wide receiver 1 here, at least in terms of targets and where Allen's eyes tend to go to. So if he's not healthy, you better hope that A, these receivers can get open, and B, Brady can get back to being in his bag and scheming some things up here, because I think it was right before he came on, I was talking about the receivers and Joe Brady, just the state that the Bills are in right now. So I guess we'll start there for this part of it. What is your assessment of these weapons or lack thereof for Josh?
They were not a group that could separate last year, and the guys they brought in are, basically Keon and Curtis Samuel. And I think you alluded to it earlier that Curtis Samuel's usage has been disappointing. Now, look, he had the turf toe injury in preseason, but he hasn't been on the injury report, and there really is no visual indication he's still having an issue with that injury. But you want to just talk about what they're doing with him. I actually charted it. I wanted to see. I got the paper right in front of me here. So I had Curtis Samuel on the field for 33 snaps, okay? Of those 33, 10 were run plays, so throw them out. 23 pass plays. 6 of them were pass plays where he ran a route behind the line of scrimmage. 5 of them were either curls or short crossers, so 5 yards and shorter. And then the other 12 were basically go balls. There are a couple of corners and post routes, but essentially they're using him to clear space out underneath for other receivers. They're essentially not making him a part of the offense other than behind the line of scrimmage, curl flat stuff, which to me is a waste of his talent. This team last year did not have a group of receivers that could separate a man coverage. Teams were happy to play man against the Bills because it didn't matter who you had on defense, you're probably going to win. Well, Samuel came here as a guy who was supposed to be able to win against man coverage. And I haven't seen a ton of it, to be fair. The injury, I'm sure, is a part of that. But they're not really giving him a chance to work his magic at all. This is not a guy that's, given a variety of routes. He's not working the whole route tree, or at least, certainly didn't against Houston. And prior to that game, he wasn't playing more than 20, 30% of the snaps. So to me, Curtis Samuel, he may not be a guy that can change things even if they do give him more opportunities, but he's not getting the opportunities right now, bottom line. And then beyond that, they just don't have a group that separates. Dalton Kincaid's been disappointing this year. I thought he'd be better. Keon Coleman, though, he's as expected. This was the book on him. He's not a guy who separates. Well, he doesn't separate. It's not a shock. And as much as the Bills were successful the first 3 weeks of the year, I think a lot of that was, Joe Brady having, like you said, dialing up the X's and O's. But some of it is first 3 weeks of the year, all those X's and O's are new. The Ravens and Houston have had multiple weeks to look at what the Bills are doing. And the other guys get paid too. It's not shocking that they were able to figure things out. I don't know if it's even, the level of competition or Khalil Shakir being out. I think both those things are factors. But it just might be the fact that there's only so many things you can do with this group of receivers. Joe Brady did them all, or a lot of them, in the first 3 weeks. And it's going to be hard to find adjustments off of those things because you just don't have guys who can play above the scheme. And when you need the scheme to prop up your passing game or whatever, particular part of a football team we're talking about, then when you play better talent, when you put more things on film, it's going to be harder to succeed with those things. And I think these are the biggest part of the problems the Bills are running into right now.
Yeah, see, now the problem with this is the book is out on how to stop this Bills offense because it's been night and day from the first 3 weeks to the last 2 weeks because teams know, or at least are picking up on the fact that these receivers and even the running backs and the tight ends for that matter, they lack the ability to separate and get open. So if Josh needs more time to try to find that receiver, well, what's going to happen when you blitz the heck out of him and then he has all that pressure on his face? So that's essentially the recipe. You just blitz this offense, and the offensive line was playing really well for the first 3 weeks. And now they've fallen off a little bit, but I think part of that is because Josh gets happy feet and then he wants to run out and try to make something happen. So I don't want to act like it's all the offensive line's fault because maybe sometimes he kind of steps into that pressure himself instead of just standing in the pocket. And sometimes he draws that contact to him. But either way, when you don't have receivers who can get open, it's going to make things murky. And now, again, you have a team like the Jets who are very blitz happy to begin with, and all the different disguises and coverages that they normally play on the Bills, because Josh usually struggles against the Jets anyways. So not going to lie, I'm a little bit concerned going into this game because this is a defense that's usually right there and they know what to do to counter this Bills offense. You throw in the fact that these receivers aren't getting open, man, it could be a long day for that Bills offensive line.
This is going to be a big problem for the Bills because when you have Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed as the corners, the Jets are not going to worry about having to provide those guys with help. It doesn't matter who the receiver is for the Bills. They're going to be happy to put Reed and Gardner on islands and say to the Bills, go ahead and try and beat us. And then what you get now is those other 9 guys in the field can do anything they want. You want to mess around with coverages? You want to drop 8? Let Josh sit in the pocket, try and find no one open? We can do that. You want to blitz 7? That's fine. We're good putting our defensive backs one-on-one. You want to, overload one side with a blitz? This is the thing. It all kind of slides downhill. And now you've got an offensive line that has to deal with the full bag of defensive opportunities, defensive, game plans, and try and defend. Are we coming with a blitz this time? Are we just rushing 4? I don't know. Josh Allen has to deal with all that. He's got to mentally check it out, and then he's got to try and, work the ball to whatever one receiver is open on a play. And as you were saying before, sometimes the happy feet is what develops because the best play for Josh Allen is to get out of the pocket and roll, use his athleticism and his ridiculous arm talent to try and make a play in an unsettled situation, because the settled offense is going to be advantage Jets, at least in the passing game, all night long. So, yeah, this is a brutal matchup for the Bills. Now, if we want to break down the game, what the Bills can and I think should try and do is run the ball. Hopefully James Cook is healthy for that. The Jets are susceptible to there. But, man, if this is a situation, let's say the Bills are down 7 or 10 in the fourth quarter and the Jets are pinning the ears back and doing whatever they want against the Bills passing game, it could be a very rough situation.
Yeah, that is a bad combo right there. When you have receivers who can't get open to begin with, and then you have two of the best corners, at least in terms of duos in the league, between Gardner and DJ Reed, and then you have that defensive line for the Jets against the Bills' offensive line. I just hope that Brady can get back to having those short, quick passing options, right? Like you mentioned James Cook, and the Jets are 14th against the run, 2nd against the pass. So it looks like they are a little bit susceptible to getting run on. So if you can establish a line of scrimmage with Cook, maybe, assuming he's healthy, but we think he'll be fine, right?
Yeah, I think at this point, for sure. I want to see the injury report tomorrow, but I expect him to be on the field right now.
So expecting that he plays, you have a little bit of Ray Davis, maybe a Ty Johnson revenge game against his former team.
Maybe. I mean, I think the other thing we want to talk about too here is with the offensive line. I think, this conversation is kind of maybe push them aside in their ability. And look, they were not good against Baltimore, but I think against Houston, they bounced back a little bit. And, I think this is a good group in general. It's not really like these aren't all pros. These aren't the best players in the league, but I think you've got an above average group nearly across the board. I've got concerns with Osiris Torrance, but as long as you can stay on schedule and not put these guys in a lot of 3rd and longs, which is, the kind of situation the Bills have been in. Or, I think the other problem too is, you brought up the short passing game, which I think can work. But the problem is you force the Bills to go down the field on 13, 15 play drives. And they just don't have the talent to win that many times in a row, unless a lot of it is with James Cook in the run game. So that's where I think a lot of, or at least a good chunk of what's being done to bog down this Bills offense.
Yeah, we can get into the game plan a little bit later on in the show, because we usually finish with the game plan, constructing that,
Sure,
and then getting into score predictions. So I don't know exactly how much time you have.
I got at least another 15 minutes here.
Okay, cool. So we can save that for now. We'll go back to that at the end. I want to talk to you about the final 32 seconds, because
Sure.
I know this was a big point of contention, and I saw that you tweeted something about this, and I think you had a lot of comments, and I think there was a lot of mixed reactions and mixed emotions based on what you tweeted and how everything kind of transpired, right?
Yeah, my point was that I didn't have a problem with the Bills throwing 3 times there. And I think first you have to approach that situation with what the goal is. If your goal is to drain Houston of timeouts and to give them the least possible chance to kick a game-winning field goal, then sure, running the ball is certainly the, football 101 play. But I think, to me, the goal there has to be to get a first down, because the only surefire way to get to overtime is to gain 10 yards on 3 plays. And in that situation, push comes to shove, I'm going to give the ball to Josh Allen and let him figure it out. Now, do you want to argue in that game that the run game was more successful and Josh was 9 of 30 passing, and that therefore giving the ball to Josh Allen wasn't a good play? Sure. That makes a lot of sense. And I think there's a philosophical debate to be had with Sean McDermott about, in a big spot, what would you trust more? The thing that's always worked over many years, or the thing that's working better today? So I get that part of it. To me, I would still rely on the thing that's worked many, many years. And, to that point, in the second half, the Bills only were successful on 5 of 13 runs. On 7 of their last 9 runs, they gained 3 yards or less. So although the run game was working better over the totality of the game, the recent success rate of the Bills' run game was not much higher than the pass game. So end of the day, I'm going to give the ball to Josh Allen and let him try and cook, because you have to have a first down there to assure yourself of getting overtime.
Yeah, that's how I opened up the show, because I was saying how I've been doing this thing called Cuse's Corner, where I'll give like a 10, 15-minute reaction to that game, and it'll either come out like that night or the following morning. And I recorded it, I think it was 5:30 on Sunday, and I was pretty hot. And I took the side that this is another late game blunder from Sean McDermott, which I think I still agree with that take, because the Bills messed it up. Like, there's no other way of saying it, because that's not to say that they would have won in overtime, but you at least have to get it to overtime. So I think you can classify this as another mismanaged game from Sean McDermott. But I was like, the more I thought about it, and then I saw your tweet too, and I was like, maybe we need to hold back on the McDermott criticism, because I think there's a lot that goes into this. Because actually, when I started having these feelings was when I was recording. I said, well, wait a sec. They put the ball in their best player's hands. Because if it was the opposite and they ran 3 straight times to James Cook, people would have said, why are you being so conservative? Oh my God, Sean McDermott is so conservative. He'll never learn. He'll never get aggressive. We need a new coach. Bring in Ben Johnson. Bring in the new glorified offensive mind, because I can't do it with McDermott anymore, So instead, he does the opposite, and he puts it in Josh Allen's hands. But the problem that I have with it is that they were low percentage plays. It's not that you had a simple slant with a Curtis Samuel over the middle of the field, or Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. You go down the boundary with Keon Coleman. They threw a flag, then they picked it up. Then he threw up a prayer to Matt Collins. And then there was a crosser to Curtis Samuel, and by then it was too late. They only used 16 seconds of clock. No timeouts were used by the Texans. So I think that's the problem right there, is that they didn't force the Texans to use their timeouts. They didn't move the ball at all. They didn't keep the clock moving. They didn't get that first down. So maybe it's not as bad as we once thought, because McDermott made these stupid decisions. I think some of the blame needs to go to Joe Brady, because they didn't try to just say, Josh, here, look, just complete it 5 to 7 yards down the field. Make them use a timeout. We'll live to fight another down.
I think Joe Brady probably is a part of that. I think you have to look at the 3 plays, though, too. And although, look, I understand the idea of having an issue with the play call, I don't know how much of that is actually on Joe Brady. To take each play individually, the Keon Coleman play, the Texans went heavy zone towards the 3 receiver side, which is the opposite of where Keon Coleman was, and left Coleman one-on-one. Football passing 101 is that you get a guy one-on-one, that's the throw you make, and that's the throw Josh made. The problem was is that Keon Coleman doesn't win one-on-one that much and had to commit a penalty to prevent an interception. So was the play call wrong? Was Josh Allen wrong? I don't know, because 99 times out of 100, when you get that coverage in that situation, that's the throw that's going to be made. Play number 2, to me, is on Josh Allen. Now, to be fair, I know that you had a little criticism for Matt Collins earlier in the show. Matt Collins, to me, was the guy who got open the most in this game. I thought he had a pretty solid game, to be honest. And one of the things he was succeeding on, you saw it in the first half, was the stop-and-go stuff, the double moves. Well, Josh Allen saw an opportunity where if Hollins hits a double move, it's going to be a big play. The problem was this time, I think Houston realized Hollins was succeeding on the double moves as well. Their safety sat back and didn't get beat. Hey, tip your cap to the defense for doing the right thing. In addition, Spencer Brown lost inside, so there's pressure there. Josh couldn't go to a different receiver. He did have Dalton Kincaid open over the middle, and that was available at the snap. So although I understand Josh seeing Matt Collins all game long winning on double moves and thinking, wow, I got a shot to do it again, the play there, to your point, was to go underneath, get yards, cost a timeout, run some clock. He didn't make that call. I don't know what the prescribed thing was. Maybe Joe Brady told him to go deep, but the short throw was there. He didn't take it. Then on third down, they have the throw to Curtis Samuel. He's wide open. This is going to be a 20-yard play and a first down, and we go to overtime and everybody's happy. But Deion Dawkins gets beat pretty bad by Will Anderson, who walks Dawkins back to the quarterback, and the pressure interrupts the play. So when you look at the 3 plays, is that on Joe Brady? A little bit. Was it on Sean McDermott? Maybe a little bit. It's on everybody. So to say, well, if this one guy had done something different, that's probably not accurate, because it was everybody doing it, causing a little bit of the problem that ended up allowing the Texans to have a chance to win the game late.
Yeah, I think that's where I fall on this too, because I am tired of Sean McDermott's mismanaged clock here. This is reared its ugly head before, but at the same time, as we've been talking about here, maybe we need to kind of settle on those and say, well, wait a sec. Josh Allen probably could have had a better read. Joe Brady probably could have made it easier. And I'm really curious, because I don't know if you guys have asked this before, or maybe it hasn't been asked, but I would love to know what goes on in those headsets. What does Brady tell Allen? Is Sean McDermott inside his head? Does McDermott hear and say, nah, I don't like that, call something else, Joe? Or do you think they're saying, Josh, here's a play, but look, you're going to have Samuel open over the middle, so he's your first read. Try to find him. If not, then you go down the boundary with Coleman or something. So
we've talked with these guys a lot, the last couple of weeks because, you've had not only that end of game thing, but you had the trick play that Baltimore that went bad.
Yeah.
And without being in the headset, what I'm going to extrapolate from the various answers is that Sean McDermott and Joe Brady during timeouts will have bigger picture type stuff. Do we go for it on 4th down if you get to a 1st and 10 situation in that end of game scenario? Do you want to burn timeouts or do you want to get a 1st down? Stuff like that. Once we get into a play thing, I don't think Sean McDermott has a ton of ability with the play clock running down to interrupt what Joe Brady's trying to do. Obviously, there are situations when he has to. Look, if he didn't like where that drive was going, he has the ability to do it. But when it comes to the conversation with the quarterback, that's almost exclusively the offensive coordinator. Joe Brady will call the play for Josh Allen. And yeah, he might say, look, we think we'll get this on this play. Or if we get this coverage, look for this receiver. And the rules are the offensive coordinator is allowed to be in Josh Allen's head until there's 15 seconds to go on the play clock. So you can guarantee up until then, Joe Brady is trying to arm Josh Allen as best he can with as much information as he can. But he can't tell him to do everything. And I think the Bills have enough trust in Josh Allen. And frankly, look, Josh Allen's a $256 million guy. If Josh Allen wants to do whatever Josh Allen wants to do, no one's going to have a problem with that because he's earned that right. So Joe Brady could tell Josh Allen whatever he thinks he should do. At the end of the day, Josh Allen has the ball in his hands. He's got the big contract. He's going to make the final decision.
Yeah, so I guess we'll just leave it there because ultimately the Bills have to get better. I guess one final thing that I will say is I was just thinking about it. And let's just say that the Bills did run 3 straight times, right? So you take the other side that people on Twitter have been talking about and say 3 straight runs, say it goes for 8 yards total. So you're looking at 4th and 2. Probably about the same time, right? Maybe a little bit less because running plays could be quicker because Josh was dropping back and throwing some deeper shots.
Yeah, I'd say probably you want to figure 4 or 5 seconds less if you do run all 3 times.
So that would probably be 20 seconds left, right? Because they punted with 16. So you're looking at 20 seconds left. And instead of Sam Martin standing back on the back line of the end zone, he probably has a little bit of room to work with. And Woods had a pretty good return. And I said this, too, before he came on. I completely forgot that Robert Woods is still a Texan.
Me too.
I was like, wait.
He had a good game, though.
Robert who?
Yeah.
So he returned it, and he got it up to Buffalo's 46. So if you take those 8 yards, right? Mm-hmm. So you give Sam Martin 8 more yards to work with because they theoretically were able to get 8 yards as 4th and 2. By the time he fields it and returns it, it's on Houston's 46-yard line, and they don't have that last timeout to be able to get them in field goal range and try to get everything set up. So I think really, even if they didn't get that 1st down, the main thing was just make sure that you can make them use their timeouts.
I mean, the other part of that situation, too, would be that instead of Houston having the ball with 7 seconds left to start that possession, it'd probably be 12. And you do have an opportunity there to run a couple sideline patterns and move yourself closer. The other part of it, too, is that the Fairbairn field goal, I was right on the end line, and I'm sure everybody saw it at home as well. From 59 yards, he could have made that from 65 or more. So you didn't have to get all the way up to the Bills' 41 for him to be able to make that kick. Would it have been harder for Houston? For sure. But again, I don't think running the ball for 8 yards guarantees anything. And I don't know if you looked, but Yankees win. Oh, Yankees win.
I was like, yeah. I got to look because I saw something in the corner of my eye and like that might have been a win. That might have been a dub.
No. The Royals had 1st and 3rd in the 8th, but went 1, 2, 3 in the 9th.
Nice. Okay, so I want to talk to you about Dawson Knox because I don't want to keep you too long, but people were talking about this in the comments earlier. I mentioned it. What is going on there? Because I think he is another key piece of this offense. I mentioned Curtis Samuel, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Dawson Knox. I think those are the 3 biggest names that I have on my list that I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, we got to get these guys more involved because when you look at Knox's contract, the original extension was 4 years, $52 million. Curtis Samuel, 3 years, $24 million. I mean, those are tens of millions of dollars, and the 2 of them combined have what? 100 yards, if that.
It's scary to think about. Yeah, look, right this second, they're just
80?
bad contracts.
80 yards.
Yeah. Is that what it is, 80?
Samuel has 8 for 48. Knox is 3 for 78 yards.
Jeez.
And they hit. Okay, so
through
that's
5 games.
Yeah, and they are what, $78 million combined?
Well, the total contract's a little different. You want to look at the yearly.
Yeah.
Regardless, they're bad contracts right now. And with Knox, going into the season, you start thinking about what pass catcher for the Bills do you want to have the ball? If you just want to rank them, number one, Khalil Shakir. After that, Dalton Kincaid. I think they're 1-2, no doubt. Then Keon Coleman. I'd want Curtis Samuel, James Cook in the next group. Following that, Mac Hollins had a really good training camp. So at least preseason going into the year, there's an argument to be made that you want him on the field. Ray Davis has some potential. Ty Johnson proved himself last year. So Dawson Knox might have gone into the season, despite the talent he's shown as a receiver. He's not bad. As the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, maybe best option. So it was just a numbers game that, look, I know the Bills talk about everybody eats, but there's only so many throws you have in a game. Everybody can't eat that much. I think he was just kind of the guy who was left out a little bit. And frankly, they needed someone to be a blocking tight end. Quentin Morris is okay at it. You don't want to put him on the field any more than you have to. Knox at least come in the season with a solid blocking tight end. I think he hasn't been very good at all this year, but that's an unusual thing. That's a surprise. So his role kind of shifted to, there are other guys in front of you we like better, and we need you to block. So that's why I think a lot of the reason he has not been as involved in the passing game.
It's just such a head scratcher when you think in terms of AAV, it's almost $10 million. And it's like, really? Can't you get someone else who can block for $10 million? Like, Knox had 9 touchdowns a couple of years ago, and that was one of Allen's favorite targets, right? Like, I'm thinking about all those cold games when Knox was sleeveless, and then he would post those Instagram pics and be like, yep, dad fed me today. And he just had like such a great relationship with Josh. And when I was looking at the box score the other day, I literally had to do a double take because I was like, wait, where's Dawson Knox? And I'm like, he didn't even have a target.
The other thing too is, Knox always had those issues with the drops, and he worked hard on it. Did all kinds of off-season work, and I think there's a moment early in maybe 2022 where it seemed like that issue had been fixed, but it really has never gone away. So when you think about, again, who do you want to throw the ball to? Despite Knox's athletic ability, you just can't depend on him to catch a pass. And I know James Cook has that same issue going right now, but other than that, Keon Coleman's hands, obviously Shakir's hands, Samuel, MVS, Hollins, these are not guys that come to this team with drop issues. So, it doesn't mean that Knox can't be effective and a weapon. And if you give him 3, he'll make a good play on 2. But I think that does hurt him when it comes to getting an opportunity to catch the ball.
Yeah, I think, look, he's not going to be a 1,000-yard receiver. Like, Dalton Kincaid has established himself as tight end 1 here. But when I opened up the show, I was talking about MVS and how he's averaged 525 yards per season, 6 years with, I think it was 3 or 4 with Green Bay, then 2 or 3 with Kansas City, right? Maybe it was 3 and 3. But either way, he was averaging 525 yards. And I think that's exactly what the Bills could use out of him, where he's not going to be that dominant possession receiver. He's not going to command a lot of targets, but it's like, hey, if you could stretch the field for us. And going back to my point about Mac Hollins, why can't MVS run those routes? Because if you're paying him, I would have to look into Mac Hollins' contract, but MVS's contract is worth up to $4.5 million. So they clearly signed him with some intent, and I haven't seen any intent there. He could be running these deep routes, at least distract the defense. Have you tracked his routes at all? Because I feel like MVS has just done nothing.
Yeah, he hasn't been on the field a lot, and I'll answer your question pretty easily. Mac Hollins is a really good wide receiver blocker. Came to Buffalo with an excellent reputation, and it's shown so far on the field. So if you have Mac Hollins and MVS, who are both going to run essentially the same route tree, and you're right, a lot of it is stretching the field, spreading the defense. If I have a guy that also can be a threat as a run blocker, that guy's going to play more than the guy who isn't as much of a threat. That's not to say MVS can't block. He's been okay there too. But Hollins is just a lot better. So that's why Hollins is going to get a lot of the snaps. This offense, even last year, relied on Gabe Davis as a run blocker. In terms of the receivers they have right now, Khalil Shakir isn't bad at it. They don't really have a guy beyond. Keon Coleman can do it, but Mac Hollins is the guy that they use the most when it comes to being a receiver involved in the run fits. That's why he's going to get the snaps over MVS.
We are exactly 1 hour into the show. I want to thank all 800 live viewers that we have right now for tuning in. Kevin Siracuse with you here with Thad Brown. Thank you, Thad, once again for joining me tonight. And I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do need to ask you about Mike Edwards. So then you can kind of tell me how much time you have left after that if you want to help me construct a game plan. But I at least got to get this in about Mike Edwards. we talked about Curtis Samuel, MVS, Dawson Knox. Going to the defensive side of the ball, what the heck's going on there? Because I thought, just like Curtis Samuel, Edwards was going to be a very solid signing, right? Like I didn't expect him to be a Justin Simmons flashy, sexy pick, right? But I was like, okay, he's a former third-round pick, played for Tampa Bay, won a Super Bowl there, played in Steve Spagnuolo's defense with Kansas City. He was a spot starter when they needed him, played against the Bills in the playoff game. And the way I saw was he was essentially that center fielder where he kind of surveyed the whole defense. Maybe he wasn't going to flash athletically or have these gaudy numbers, but I felt like he was going to be always in position. You know, it's someone like a Kyrie Elam. He has the athleticism, but Mike Edwards would be more of like that technical, the savviness, right? Like he would be able to pick up on the defense, but it seems like he hasn't been able to pick up on the defense. But is that the best assessment? Because he's not on the injury report anymore. He's playing special teams, but you don't see him at safety.
You're right on with what has happened here, or at least my opinion of it. When Mike Edwards got hurt in training camp, he lost an ability to be on the field and learn with the rest of his teammates about what he's got to do in the Sean McDermott defense. We talked to Rasul Douglas after the Houston game, and Rasul said, we put a lot on our safeties. So with Edwards not on the field to A, learn, but B, show that he can succeed in this defense, it left it open to Damar Hamlin. Now, Hamlin had the big advantage of being here for multiple years. He knows what the safety has to do. He knows where to be. And having that confidence provided a base for him to have an incredible training camp. And Hamlin took the job from Mike Edwards. Now, look, you at home might think Hamlin isn't that good, hasn't played that well. That's fine. In training camp, Damar Hamlin looked like a starting safety. And Mike Edwards basically got Wally pipped. He wasn't on the field to play. The guy who showed up and was on the field played great, and Edwards lost his chance. So now the Bills are going with not only the player who looked better in camp, but the more experienced player when it comes to operating in the Sean McDermott defense, which is very difficult for safeties. This is why Cole Bishop is going to have a very uphill climb to get any playing time this year because he got hurt, and he's a rookie. Not only does he not know what to do in the Sean McDermott defense, he's never played in the NFL before. So I think that just, a little bit of circumstance, but a lot of Damar Hamlin playing well enough to take the job.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, where like a lot of people are at home saying, Damar Hamlin, really? Like it was a nice story, but he's not an NFL starter. And I kind of agree, but I think it's also important to look at both sides because against the Jaguars, he made that interception and he was everyone's darling. And I was like, oh, look at Damar. I'm so happy for him. The following week, he sucks. Get him out of there. Derrick Henry's running all over him. And it's like, come on, you got to at least try to be in the middle. You can't think that we're going to be Super Bowl bound and everyone's an MVP one week and then think that everyone sucks and needs to get traded the following week. But I think that it is a fine line that you have to balance there. And I think that with Taylor Rapp's concussion, like I thought this is a week maybe we could have seen something from Mike Edwards, right? I thought with Cole Bishop being so new, and I understand you want to get him in there. It was a little bit of a shaky start. So I don't think McDermott would want to necessarily pull the plug and say, all right, we can't do this anymore. Mike Edwards, you're going in. But I would just like to see Edwards in some capacity. We know that McDermott can kind of scheme things up. Look what he's doing with Jamarcus Ingram in these dime packages. You don't even see Edwards in any of those packages.
Jamarcus Ingram, by the way, had a really good camp. I'm not surprised that he's playing well and getting playing time. I mean, he really had a standout camp that wasn't talked about enough because we spent time with Keon Coleman and Kyrie Elam and all these other bigger names. So that's not a surprise to me either. When it comes to Cole Bishop against Mike Edwards, I don't have a great explanation for you. To me, they're both similar levels. Mike Edwards has the experience. Cole Bishop's younger, a little more athletic. But the one thing I can say is that when both guys were healthy and the Bills needed a safety to be active, Cole Bishop for the last few weeks has been the guy who was active on game day, and Mike Edwards was not. So at some point between the end of preseason and last Sunday, Cole Bishop had moved ahead of Mike Edwards on the depth chart. And as a result, when Taylor Rapp was unavailable, Cole Bishop got the call. I got no explanation, on-field reason, thing I like better, trait, whatever. That's just what happened.
Yeah, and Bishop dealt with that injury over the summer too. And, I was under the impression that McDermott kind of slow played these rookies. So that's why I figured with Coleman at the boundary receiver position, I was like, okay, well, probably Curtis Samuel's going to get a lot of looks because they're going to want to kind of ramp up Coleman. Same thing with Cole Bishop. It'll be Mike Edwards' job until Bishop is ready. it's kind of been the opposite so far.
And with, again, the defensive side of the ball, because of the just workload that the safeties have to deal with, what they have to understand, how many different, and the Bills, even though they've got a newer group of safeties, they still rotate coverages all the time. So they might show 2 deep safeties, and then at the snap, they rotate. One guy comes up over the middle, becomes kind of a what they call a robber, playing like a short safety, and the other guy drops back. Sometimes they'll move into a cover 3 look where a corner drops back into deep coverage with them. So there's a lot of things that have to be understood, which makes it hard for a young guy and a rookie like Cole Bishop to not only learn it, but then learn it on the fly when you miss 3 months of the summer. Or 3 weeks, I'm sorry, my bad.
Well, Thad, you've been on for 45 minutes. I thank you again. Kevin Masseri said that he can actually join the show and construct the game plan, get the score prediction. So I'll leave it up to you. If you have some time and you want to construct it with us, feel free. But if you have to get going, then that is fine as well.
I probably should exit. I am at the station. I get some work done. I got to finish up what I did today from Buffalo. I'm sorry not be on with Kevin. He does a great job. I appreciate all the work he does. I will say quick, my thoughts on the game plan. It's about the run game for the Bills. You got to stop the Jets from running it, force them to be a throwing team. They want to run. When they don't succeed with it, the offense does struggle, even though they've got some nice pieces in the pass game. And then again, we talked about it before. On offense, if the Bills don't run the ball, if you told me right now the Bills don't have more than, say, 70 yards rushing, then they're not winning this game. They have to be able to move it on the ground against the Jets.
All right, Thad. And finally, where can people find you? Because if we have some fans out in the Rochester area, where can they find your work, whether it's on TV, Twitter, X, social media, podcasts? What do you got?
As with all of us, it's like everything right now. But I'm on TV at News 8 in Rochester. You can find my online work at rochesterfirst.com. And then I am Thad Brown 7 on X, Instagram, and TikTok. So trying to, work all of the social media apps. Got to try and, do as much with everything as you can. So always open to talking with the people out there and the fans. And, I love a good football conversation on X. Don't always get them, but when we do get them, I do enjoy them a lot.
I think we had a good conversation on here tonight. So again, thank you. And I think a lot of people enjoyed it as well.
For sure. Kevin, thanks for having me on, man. I had a good time. Appreciate it.
All right. And you're going to New York, New Jersey?
Yep. On the road. I actually got funny. We started and ended this with high school girls volleyball. I've got a volleyball tournament in Albany that I'm going to first on Saturday, and I'll drive the rest of the way down and be at the game Monday night.
All right. Well,
remember Buffalo Kickoff Live, by the way, everybody. It's on every market in New York State. We'll be on Monday night as well.
All right. Well, safe travels, and hopefully you can come back and talk about a win.
Sounds good, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. So now we have Kevin Masseri back in the saddle.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Thad, for your time as well, giving your awesome insight on the field and from your opinions. But glad to be here. We saw a very thrilling Yankees victory, 3-2, with a Giancarlo Stanton 8th inning home run. Now, the best part of that, Kevin, isn't that the Yankees won. The best part of that is that Mahomes went home sad. He was there. Mahomes finally takes an L. You should have seen him pouting. It was like he lost a call late in the Bills with the offside call with Kadarius Toney. But there's a lot. I was listening to your Mike Edwards talk, and what's interesting to me about Mike Edwards, 2 things that I wanted to bring up before we go into our game plan with that specific question. One being, no one's mentioning the bonuses he has. It has something to do with it, in my opinion. He can construct over $1 million plus in bonuses by playing and by being active. So some of those early inactives and some playing time / with interceptions, if those come, those can equal a lot of money on the Bills cap. And the Bills may have felt at some point, maybe he's marginally along the same lines as DeMar, or marginally like, let's just go to Cole because that's our future. The Bills would have to eat another $1 million against their cap next year, and they may not feel like that's going to increase their odds to winning. And what's interesting is, like, the Bills could have lost the game against the Texans because of a miscue where Rasul Douglas thought that he had coverage over top with Cole Bishop, and Cole Bishop completely blew it. He bit on a run fake and left potentially one of the best receivers. Now he's on IR, but one of the best receivers in the NFL wide open to streak the field. Mike Edwards is in that game. We don't know that turns out like that. Obviously, there's so many things, and there's so many things to break down beyond just the one play. But it's very interesting to know what could happen if you would have made that switch. So beside the bonuses, it's more than just a little buck here and there. It's enough to make you say, Has that been a consideration this whole time? Because right now it's $30,000 per just being active. If he plays 58% of the snaps, he gets $250K right there, 70% another $550K. And if he's essentially a starter, he gets another $725K. If he gets 3 interceptions, $350K, 4 interceptions, around $500K. There's a lot of escalators in there that in theory, if he was the starter, the Bills probably see another $1.7 million against the cap, Kevin. So it's something that's is he that much better than the 3 they have? The Bills don't feel like he is, between that and what you guys are talking about with the missed camp time.
So are you saying that the Bills are holding off on Mike Edwards to go trade for Devonte Adams?
I'm just saying that the $1.75 million, when they don't feel like they're going to have an upgrade to what they have, is important. So I do think that, yes, whether it's a player this offseason or at the deadline, I do think the Bills are considering what he makes over what DeMar Hamlin or Cole Bishop makes by being in the game. And ultimately with Taron Johnson back, now you got Cam Lewis back to the dime backer role. I don't know, is he going to go to the bench or is it going to be Ingram still in the dime backer? I don't know how that's going to play out because Lewis was technically the day one dime backer. And then he had to quickly, after the broken arm, play nickel. But I do believe, yes, I do believe there's some maneuvering to have the $1.75 million available that they can't have eaten up next year. I think that is weighing into the decision, especially when I see him inactive again this week. If Rapp is cleared, I do expect him to be inactive again, and the Bills save more money by making him inactive. So I do think that there's some cap maneuvering, and it's not about the cash. I'm not trying to rip him off from his cash. It's about the cap. The Bills have to save cap space.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way. Now, I kind of said it as a joke, but I do want to bring up Devonte Adams, as Nick asked here. Do you think we are trading for a wide receiver? We're in on Adams. Yeah. So it came out today, right, that the Bills are one of 4 teams who are still officially in on the Devonte Adams sweepstakes. So, I mean, it seems like it's more than just smoke at this point, right?
Yeah, so if you look at it from a perspective of an athletic reporter like Tim Graham or Joe Biscaglia, they have really big integrity standards with their sources, like over the top sometimes, to where I wish they broke more stories. But they have a lot of integrity from their sources. They can't just say stuff like NFL Rooms or ML Football. Like, these are accounts that actually like beat reporters from the Raiders that are reporting that. I fully believe the Bills are in on it more than just a phone call to see if he's a first round pick or not. The Bills make this deal, in my opinion, if they have the cap space, and they make this deal if for some reason they can get out of it. Kevin, the Bills have 0 players that they can restructure right now. They have nobody over a $2.8 million base salary, meaning that every single lever has been pulled to this point for this season. So they do need to make a move, and they need the Raiders to take some of the cap space, or they can't make the deal. They literally cannot do it. I tweeted out some players that could be traded. And I'm not saying any of them are worth a ton of money, but there is some money to be saved. If, you could look down the Dawson Knox or the MVS route. Kyer Elam randomly saves $1.9 million and $2.5 million next year. That could be enough to put him in the deal or a different deal to get Adams done. Hollins saves $2 million if you trade him. That's that. It's not a ton, but it's enough that the Bills would need that to make a move. And then the aforementioned Edwards, just trade him. If you're not going to play him because of the bonus standards, trade him. Like, you're making him inactive anyways. Between him and Elam, one way or the other, you can trade one of those 2 players. Then it's not a ton of money, but $2 million is enough, because you need to start making some of these moves if you want to make a deal with the Raiders or another team. And then lastly, Curtis Samuel, $1.7 million you saved this year and $4 million next year. So if he's not part of the future and you're acquiring another receiver and you're clearly not using him, now he's hurt. I don't know what's going on with that guy, but those are the likely players that I do think need to be included in the deal.
That is interesting, because I don't want to trade Kyer Elam, but do you think the Raiders would take Elam and a 4th for Adams?
Probably. Not only would Elam potentially save you some money, he's got a future. He's got a controllable contract, and he probably has a little bit of value. So he's going to bring down the draft pick compensation on top of it. So I do believe that the Bills would do something like that. Like, I'd argue they need to trade 2 of those guys to make it close. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but really, I think you need to look down it and say, like, it doesn't need to be in the same trade either. But, you could deal Elam and Edwards or Elam and Hollins. You need to free up a roster spot soon here for Darrington Evans coming off of IR. And then Von Miller, when he comes back from his suspension, it's not crazy to assume that they could do a 2-for-1 or one for a late round draft choice and one in the deal for the receiver. So I do believe the Raiders could be very interested in a young corner to supplement the rest of their roster, especially, which I guess with the quarterback hurt now, or getting benched, excuse me. Yeah, I mean, go give Kyrie Elam a try, because you're already starting Jack Jones and Jacorian Bennett and Nate Hobbs anyways at corner. So I think he could very much be in play. It makes a lot of sense, honestly, that they would use him. And then the Bills fans will maybe forget the Elam thing if you get Adams out of it, right?
Well, and you essentially have Christian Benford as CB1. So think about it like Christian Benford was the first round corner, and then Elam was taken in the 6th round. Just you essentially flipped them, you get Devonte Adams, and all is well. Now, if they were to trade Mike Edwards, he probably isn't worth as much as Elam would be. So that's probably Edwards and a second.
Bill would try Edwards and a third, but yeah, it's probably realistically maybe a little bit of sugar, but more or less Edwards would be a trade there that would help you out more than them. Essentially, you're freeing a roster spot, you're freeing up a little bit of money to help this deal get done. They may look at him as a player they could use down the stretch a little bit in Raiders just to see what they have, and maybe could look at a new contract. But yeah, you're looking at a 6th or 7th round pick value out of Edwards. He is a pretty good football player. That's what's interesting about the most recent non-playment. But if they don't want to pay him his bonuses, let him go to a team that will. And unfortunately, that would leave you with 3 safeties on the roster. But I guess with flexible Cam Lewis, I still think he's fully a corner. Now you got to call somebody up. You do have we have Lewis Seen, a dime backer, now practicing as a dime backer more than a safety. So there's realistic options the Bills can make that would transpire like a rolling rock down a hill. If you're looking at getting a receiver like Devonte Adams, you got to start somewhere, and you do have to trade one. I know everyone's going to say, I don't know how much any of these guys are worth. It doesn't matter what they're worth. They would probably have to be included in a deal in order for the Bills to acquire somebody of that stature.
That is interesting, because I haven't thought about it from that perspective, because like I said, I think Kyrie Elam is still, maybe he's not worth that 1st round pick tag anymore. He was selected, 25th overall a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
So again, it looks like Christian Benford should have been selected as that 25th overall player, and Elam should have been taken on Saturday. But either way, I feel like he could still carve out a nice role, because look what happened last year in the playoffs when you needed Elam to step up, and he had that big interception against the Steelers. So I feel like you can still use that athleticism to your advantage, and they already only have Jamarcus Ingram. And to be fair, I was saying the Bills needed an outside corner all summer. Now, Ingram filled those shoes very nicely. So I think the Bills are fine right now, but then you would only have 3 boundary corners if you trade Elam. So I'm sure they could shuffle some things around, maybe call someone up from the practice squad. But I just feel like there's a lot there with Elam, and I'm not ready to part with them yet. But then again, like if it does get you Devonte Adams, you almost have to, considering how well Christian Benford's playing. And Douglas, for that matter. I know Douglas has had his faults here. There have been a couple clips that came out, a couple plays where he just kind of got toasted, either in run defense or pass coverage. But we know that Douglas and Benford are CB1 and CB2. I don't know how Elam's going to make this. He's already made the roster, but I don't know how he's going to crack the starting lineup unless there's an injury.
The boundary corner thing to me is like, they can do so many different things. And they would be a little bit thin if a boundary went down. I think obviously they've been over to already come one of their best players in Taron Johnson. Overcome, I guess, is however you feel that they've done since. But they did have a lot of choices where they could go. I still think the Bills, could potentially see what they have in Daquan Hardy on the practice squad. And maybe they could go out and acquire a corner themselves if worst case happens. But they just straight up, most likely, especially if we're talking to Devonte Adams specifically in a deal, they're going to have to move somebody. So, and they're going to want to move somebody that they think they can get a little value for, they could save a little money from, who could take off the stress of the exact assets or compensation needed for Devonte Adams. They got to pick somebody. Or they can trade somebody to somebody else, I guess, but they're going to need to pick one of those names I had on the list, or a bigger name, which I wouldn't see anyone bigger than the names I brought up there. Like Knox would probably be the top of like the biggest name list. I don't think they're going to get any crazier than that if they even go that crazy. But somebody like MVS wouldn't even save you enough. You could go with the MVS route, but I'm thinking more along the lines of it would have to be like a Curtis Samuel swap. You'd have to do Mike Edwards. There's just, especially if you're talking about the Raiders, they're not eating money, or like one of those moves could help you make a better deal. And Elam may be what it would be required. Maybe they'd ask for him even. It may be required to make the acquirement. And also you're saving money this year and next year. So the Bills could feel the need to move on from one of the players that's inactive. Like if he's borderline inactive every week, you're playing Jamarcus Ingram in front of him. You're getting Cam Lewis into the nickel and dime situations. You're training Lewis Cine in those situations. You may like what you see out of Hardy on the practice squad. I liked like the play from a couple of their guys in training camp as well, most notably to Corey Couch. So they're going to have a fulfillment there at a position that McDermott is very good at. And if that's going to take the burden off of making a deal to help your offense, you can't just keep stashing these guys. And you're right, Christian Benford has played to the 23rd overall pick value. And between, let's say they make a move for Adams, you have literally by a lot of metrics, a top 3 corner in the NFL in Christian Benford and what he's able to do. You got him in the draft. Now you're trading that player for a future asset or a huge star in Devonte Adams. Like, we got to let the Kyrie Elam thing go with Jamil Adai as his new DB coach. If he himself, after they transition coaches, doesn't think that he can get in the lineup, then may be the end of the road. It isn't just one coach that didn't like him. Now you have multiple coaches and multiple different personnel people that have seen him. It may be time to cash him out in a deal that helps your offense this year right now and helps you get W's as compared to maybe seeing what you have at a corner next year.
What would a Dawson Knox trade look like? How much money would the Bills save if they could trade away Knox and include that in on the deal with Adams?
So if you're trading just Dawson Knox and a pick, let's say, you would
Knox
save
two. Fourth?
Yeah. They may want a third still, but
third. Yeah.
$2.7 million against the cap this year and $1.6 million against the cap next year.
So, I mean, nothing crazy.
Not crazy enough to really take a hit on him, in my opinion. But you could, if the team wanted him, if the Raiders were like, but the Raiders wouldn't be the fit for him because they drafted a different tight end last year in Michael Mayer, and then have a stud in Brock Bowers. So I wouldn't think they would be the ones asking for him.
And there'd be a lot of dead money involved too, right? Like the Bills would have
16 million dead. Yeah.
16?
Yeah, between the 2 years. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Total. Between this year and next year. The savings are what you're focusing on, but yes, the dead money totality would be about $16 million in dead money if you moved on from Dawson Knox right now. I tend to think he's on the roster this year and next year, but the Bills have already shown a propensity to think about trading players with dead cap, a la Stephon Diggs, but I don't think that that's a precedent more than it is. Stephon Diggs wanted to be traded. The Bills got the best asset they could for him, which was a decent asset. Unfortunately, the Vikings are apparently the best team in the NFC. That's a stinker. They thought they were going to get like the 35th overall pick. I don't know that they're going to keep that up, but it's now going to be in at least the 50s. So that's a little bit of a hit for them, at least equal with the Texans pick probably. So that's a little bit of a hit. But that's the asset they got for eating that dead cap. I don't think they're going to want to do it with Knox. The other names are way more realistic. The only way you would trade Knox is if someone actually had legit value for him, and you could actually get like a 1-for-1 swap with a receiver that you think will help you immediately. But outside of that, I can't see Knox and a pick going to somebody, especially the Raiders. They don't need a tight end there. That's the one position they're set with young players.
One last thing I'll say about this talk. I didn't know we were going to be getting into it. We were going to construct the game plan, but you know what? I'm always up for a little wide receiver talk because I feel like every show you can just go back to the wide receiver room, right? Like it's just so pertinent. But what I do want to say though is last week I was a little iffy and I was like, I kind of want to see this through a little bit, right? Like I want to test out this experiment about everybody eats. It's only one bad game. I think they'll get back on track. Well, now it's 2 bad games. And now I want Adams that much more. So if I was like 50-50, 60-40 last week, now it's more like 75-25. And really, it might even be more than 75. But I don't want to get too crazy and say, like, we need Devonte Adams. Because like I was telling Thad, just 2 weeks ago, the Bills were everyone's darling, and everyone was talking about them as Super Bowl contenders. Josh Allen was the MVP. He won AFC Player of the Month with all these wide receivers who we are now complaining about. So I think it just takes one good game to get back on track, and you're like, oh, I guess we don't need to necessarily go after Devonte Adams like we thought we did. So I think recency bias plays a lot into that. So that's why I don't think I want to trade for Adams right now tonight. Eventually I might want to, but I just kind of want to temper expectations for now.
The point is with Adams, like, are you thinking you're going to see the last 2-week version or the first 3-week version? And Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have to determine, like, is it a legitimate problem? And although we were darlings 2 weeks ago, great, but is that not the version we're going to see going forward? It doesn't matter. It matters like what the version they think is going to happen. Now Curtis Samuel's hurt, like he's hurt. So now, and I don't know what strength, I do have it on good authority that I believe Khalil Shakir is going to play, but if he has a setback and doesn't play, between the like what now you're looking at literally MVS, Keon Coleman, and Matt Collins, like in Shavers. Apparently that's the guy they're calling up. So Shavers. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. That's not an NFL level receiving core. Not one when you're in a dogfight right now to make sure you're securing an AFC spot. I don't know how. I don't, even if Shakir has a setback, I don't believe that's any more than 1 week at most. Beyond this week, but still, like, I don't. And then Curtis Samuel's already been ineffective, and wildly ineffective between his routes ran, between what he's doing with the ball in his hands. At some point, that's not good enough. Without the receiver room, if I would have told you before the season, no Curtis Samuel, no Khalil Shakir, I know most people, you included, would have said they need a receiver.
Yeah. When you look at it that way, it kind of feels like this is 2018 all over again with the Kelvin Benjamin led receiver room, and Josh literally just had no one. And like that receiving core was so bad. But I feel like if you can use these players a little bit better, like maybe you can design some routes for Curtis Samuel past the line of scrimmage, maybe actually utilize his explosiveness and try to get him out in space and try to play to these players' benefits, then maybe it would start to look like the 2019 receiving core. Right? Like this isn't going to be the 2020 receiving core. That was probably at its peak when you had Diggs, Davis. Was that Beasley and Beasley Brown in 2020? Yeah, because then they got Sanders in 21, right?
Yeah, 2020 you had Beasley and Brown in 2019. So prior to Diggs. Diggs was 2020. So 2019 they went out and said after that they said that receiving core was terrible. And that's when they got Brown and Beasley. And then 2020 they made the trade in the COVID year for Stephon Diggs. And then, they went from there. Emmanuel Sanders, Gabe Davis came in, etc.
So they probably peaked in 2020, 2021 when they probably fully maximized that receiving room for Josh. But I think that they can seriously win with that 2019 version because now you have the running game, you have the tight ends, you have the strong defense once everyone's healthy. But if it's going to be like that 2018 version, then give me Devonte Adams right now. But again, that's why I kind of want to see this through, because I'm not just totally going to sit there and say, oh, this is Kelvin Benjamin 2.0. Like, no.
The slight worry I have with Kelvin Benjamin is the player we've listed here. Amari Cooper's numbers have been trending downwards. I talked to a Brown source recently about this. Actually, I was going to utilize this, maybe make a short, but no problem bringing it up now. Amari Cooper has some really poor advanced and box score stats too. He has some pretty poor advanced analytics. His yards per route ran his way down. He only has a 1 EPA. That means he's only been slightly better than expected at the receiver because he's only added 1 point to the roster. For instance, it's worse than Matt Collins. So it's challenging for me to say, let's go get Amari Cooper. If they want to give him to the Bills for a 6th round pick, and there's no other move for the Bills to make there, okay, I'm not going to turn that down. But for the assets that we've seen potentially be talked about needing to move for an Amari Cooper, it worries me a little bit about what you're going to be required to pay for him. He is 11th in the league with 27% target of his team's target share, which is 11th in the league. He's 109th in catch rate. 38% of those have been caught. Which is 109 in the league. So even if that's more of a box score stat to me, but even still, that's poor. You have a catch percentage, like I said, at 37%, a total EPA of 1.7%, and a yards per route ran of only 0.77. It's not good for Amari Cooper right now. If the Bills feel like they can turn him around, it's all Watson's fault. If they want to bank on that and they want to bank on an asset for being Watson, okay, the Bills can make. I trust Brandon Beane to make that decision. But seriously, like he has some really not interesting stats, advanced stats that I'm not looking forward to seeing. I hope that turns around for him. It possibly could. There's more than enough reason that you could say it could. But right now, I don't want to know that I'm not sure I want to be the team that banks on it happening. But it could. You could blame it all on Watson if you'd like. But he had worse quarterbacks last year. But before Flacco came in, he had DTR. He had Watson himself. So there's that in Phillip Walker. So it's not like he's always used to playing with top end quarterback. So little bit of a worry with advanced analytics around it. And I know that when the Bills make a trade, they'll be presented obviously they know the box score stats, what he produces on the field, but they'll definitely be presented by analytics from their analytics department. And it's not good. So if they're willing to take a late round draft choice and that's the move, the Bills feel like they want to bank on helping Josh Allen, I'm not gonna second guess Brandon Beane, but I would definitely come with a little bit of pause like I did Curtis Samuel on that move as well.
All right. Well, do you want to get into constructing the game plan now for this upcoming matchup with the Jets?
It's a tough one to even do because we don't know who's playing, right? We can guess, but I think it's contingent on the rosterable players, and we don't know obviously I don't think a new player is going to be on the roster, but we don't know which of their specifically the offense too, like who's playing on the team. Like the receivers missing, they have a running back missing. So does it matter? I guess we're going to have to consider them playing or not playing. What do you want to do?
I don't even care. Well, obviously I do care, but I think no matter who plays, the game plan is the same. Because I talked about this with Thad. I don't know if you heard this or not, but we agreed that now the book is out on how to stop this Bills offense. Because especially if you have corners like Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, who are very sticky corners and probably a little bit too handsy. So that'll be something to monitor on Monday night, as we've seen that with Sauce Gardner over the last couple of years. But if you don't have the ability to separate from the wide receivers on the Bills here, and you combine that with those sticky corners, that's a bad combination to begin with. And then teams are realizing that if you blitz the Bills, then Josh Allen is going to be dancing around the pocket. He's going to be running around, and then the Bills offensive line kind of unfolds. Now, some of that is due in part to maybe Allen escaping a little bit too early. But either way, that's pretty much how you stop the Bills. You don't get that separation down the field, and then you blitz them to get pressure in Allen's face so that he doesn't have the time to try to find someone to finally separate. I think this game plan has to be establishing the line of scrimmage. You try to get the run game going. The Jets are second in pass coverage, 14th against a run. So I'm not saying that they have to run constantly, right? This doesn't have to be a 30 rushing. James Cook doesn't need 30 rushing attempts.
Right.
You still want the game to go through Josh Allen. But maybe this is a week then when they can finally start to utilize the weapons that they have to their advantage. Maybe Curtis Samuel can finally get some easy routes, right? Just to move the chains. Same with MVS, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, because Kincaid is not playing like a first-round pick. So I don't think that this is a week where you're going to want to throw up prayers to Matt Collins with Sauce Gardner defending him. That just scares me already. And I will say, Josh Allen through 5 games still has 0 interceptions. Mahomes has 6. Now, Allen probably has thrown a couple that probably could have gotten picked, but the numbers don't lie. He has 0 interceptions. I would like to keep it that way, and I don't want to be throwing up these bombs to Matt Collins or fill your name in here running down the seam, So I think that they need to just kind of get back to what they did the first few weeks, get some pre-snap motion, utilize play action, and stretch the field horizontally so that it can lead to bigger gains vertically.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging to assume established line of scrimmage when we don't know if James Cook is playing. I don't know how much they're going to want to have a heavy run game specific flow with Ty Johnson. Maybe they do. I think he's jumped, by the way, based on snap count and some other factors. He has jumped Ray Davis for sure.
I started to notice that too.
Yeah, so we'll see if this is a big test for that, especially if Cook does play, which Thigh Doctor has, according to his research, 1 to 3 weeks on the injury.
For Cook?
Yeah. He stated that he's an absolutely no chance he's playing this week. I don't know if that's true or not, but he feels like he tries really hard to be accurate. So,
yeah, I don't want to discredit Thigh Doc because he usually is very accurate. But when I was talking with Thad, we both kind of thought that it was more precautionary than anything. Like, it's obviously something. Like, it's not like a vet rest day. So it's something to monitor. But we figured that it's probably something where they said, okay, this is essentially Tuesday. This is kind of like our off day. We have that extra day because it's a Monday night. So let's just kind of play it safe. We don't need them out there. But the fact that they were still walking around, talking to the offense, they were in on the meetings, that probably shows that they want to be part of the game plan, right? So I don't know, 1 to 3 weeks. That's the first time I've heard of that.
Yeah, I mean, I probably trust Curtis Samuel's probably right. That's accurate what you're saying. I'm sure he's okay. We'll see about that tomorrow. But at least when it comes to Cook, they're looking at 1 to 3 weeks. So maybe they press him for this week. And if he does play, I don't know that he gets a full workload. But I guess for purposes of breaking down the game plan, Thad was there. So let's assume he's going to play. I do think there is a percentage factor, especially if he's not in tomorrow, that he doesn't go. And then I don't know how much we have to alter our game plan based on Ty Johnson. But I do think that will help you with total game speed. Ty Johnson brings a lot to the table. He's a good pass catching back. He's physical. He hits the hole hard. He's got good speed. So ultimately it would change a little bit. I don't know that he has the total grand, vision and profile that James Cook has. But we do, I don't know how much of a step back it would be from Cook. So let's assume Cook plays. So just for purposes for this, if not, I guess, we'll see what happens at that point. 1 to 3 weeks is on the table for him. But I do think the Bills are best when pre-snap motion. I think that left glove from Josh Allen is throwing him off. I do think he tried to make a point last week to say that I can beat you, Stephon Diggs, not just with dink and dunk. I can beat you over the top. I can beat you deep. I can do whatever I want. I don't need you at all. So I think he made a little bit of a play for that. I do think the offensive coordinator himself was also very much so like, you left me. You didn't leave Dorsey. You didn't leave Dable. You left me. And you didn't think my offense was good enough for you. So I do think there was a little bit of pressing. We all talk about Josh and Steph. Obviously, there wasn't a good thing with Brady and Steph. Like, seriously, like if he liked the offensive coordinator, thought that it fit him in as a true wide receiver one, he wouldn't have gone anywhere. So I do think that has to be some contention between the style of offense the Bills run at the end of last year, and with the Bills offense that they were going to run this year, and Steph like, nah, get me out of here. Give me the Stroud. So I do think that the offensive coordinator may have a little bit of prove and didn't do a great job with that as well. So ultimately, when you look at everything, the Bills need this game. The Jets are in turmoil. You control the line of scrimmage. The Jets' offensive line has been horrific. They've had players in and out. They've had really bad advanced analytics between the pass blocking and the run blocking has been bad. Breece Hall's been down. Garrett Wilson's been getting a ton of targets and been doing a little bit with them based on the game. So I think right now on the offensive side of the ball, at least, the Bills want horizontal motion. The Bills want to stretch that good Jets defense, which is still good. We'll see what it looks like under Albright. The reason I think that he was elevated to the head coaching job is the defense shouldn't take too much of a hit as long as the players still want to play the game, which they should. And then ultimately, let's win the game with short passes, take what that's giving. The Jets are known to do that and to bait Josh Allen into throwing interceptions. They've done it. They give him the honey hole all the time. I remember the throw on the right sideline week 1 last year that they gave him. They baited him into throwing and he threw it. He needs to take his open receivers in this game. I don't know that they're going to press him in man. The Bills are going to be ready for man coverage. The Bills know how to beat man coverage. They were just thrown off by the pressure packages and decided to go deep, which sometimes some of the best against man and against pressure packages, you have lots of holes in the deep third of the field. Josh Allen decided to take those and it didn't work out. So I think the game plan this week is going to be take what the Jets has always traditionally given you. They feel like you're going to get bored and make a bad decision. But take what you're given, nickel dime your way down the field, control the line of scrimmage, and do what you can to dominate on defense and get the ball back to your offense. The defensive game plan is simple. Stop the run and put pressure on Aaron Rodgers. If he beats you with Allen Lazard and Ty Conklin, that's what it is. But you need to do whatever you can to put as much pressure on him with his bum ankle. He moved around horribly. Wasn't 100% sure he would play in this week. There was some like early talks. It could even be Tyrod Taylor. But ultimately put some pressure on him, show him that like he's already gotten his head coaching fired no matter what he says. Get that pressure, stop the run, which the Bills were very good at against the Texans. The Bills defense actually elevated to 6th in DVOA after this game. And yes, take a lead. Like they did take a 3-0 lead. That's fine. But don't get down. They've been down 3 times now by double digits. Obviously came back against the Cardinals, almost came back against the Texans, and started to come back a little bit against the Ravens before that turnover. So that's my game plan is shorten the game maybe in this one. No deep passes against the secondary. That's not needed. No fast scores. Shorten it up. Run the ball. Put a lot of pressure on the Jets. Make them turn the ball over. One of those Aaron Rodgers interceptions. Make him stay in the pocket. Get the ball back to your offense and put this game away. Go to 4-2. Put the Jets back to 2-4. And really be 3 games behind you. And the Dolphins are reeling too. On their bye week, and you're in great shape. That's a huge reason that I think the Bills go all out against a team with a new head coach, with a Taron Johnson, Terrell Bernard playing. We'll see with Ed Oliver, but Rapp being back, and they're going to get reinforcements. The 6th overall defense is getting their players back, and they need it in this game.
Piggybacking off of your points there, another reason why I think the Bills need to nickel and dime their way down the field is Will McDonald for the Jets is tied for 2nd in the league with 6 sacks. So he's been having a very sneaky good season. And going off of my point about how if your receivers can't get open down the field, then Will McDonald is going to be in Josh Allen's face. And the other defensive linemen for that matter, I mean, they still have, Quinnen Williams, Michael Clemens, Javon Kinlaw, Tack McKinley, Solomon Thomas. Are all those guys healthy?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I think they are. So, yep. I mean, they are very stout on that defensive line. They will be in your face right from the get-go. We know how they like to blitz. And now, seeing what the Ravens and the Texans did, now they're really going to want to blitz, especially if the Bills can't get that separation down the field. So that's why I'm not trying to have Mac Hollins run 20, 25-yard routes. Instead, this is why it's so key if Khalil Shakir can play. Just like sit in the middle of the field, right? 5 to 7 yards, 5 to 7 yards, move the chains. You don't have to go for it all at once.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that game plan. That's how I would develop it. Ultimately, their defense, to me, I thought they struggled in the first 2 weeks. I thought they're finally going to have a regression, and they've came back super strong. They haven't played the world's best opponents since some of their lapses in the beginning. They did play well against the Vikings, so I definitely will give them that. And you got a Patriots game in there. You got a Titans game in there. You got a Denver game in there. They didn't play the best offenses, so they played the Vikings pretty strong, though. So ultimately, Mosley is still hurt. I don't know with inside their building if he's going to go. Their nickel Michael Carter, the second, who's really good. He's a really good slot corner. Is hurt. I don't know if he's going to go in this one. They're going to fill him in with Brandon Eccles. So just a little bit of relief there for the Bills defense, or the Jets defense for the Bills offense. So, we're watching some of their injuries. They're not overly hurt for the most part. I'm sure their fans will try to claim that they are besides Jermaine Johnson. I wouldn't call them overly hurt at all. I guess Hassan Reddick didn't show.
What a mess.
Leaky Foe too.
Situation that is.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know why they haven't retraded him to somebody who I guess no one wants to pay him. It's ultimately a big mess. Maybe that part of that was on Saleh.
No one wants that baggage. I mean, he's one of those guys. He's kind of like Diggs, right? He's going to be like a diva, but a defensive end diva. Right. It's like, give me all the money. I'm worth this. I'm worth that. I'm not showing up. Okay, man. Go have your fun and do whatever you got to do wherever the heck you are. But has he even been in the facility?
No.
Aaron Rodgers can take him to Egypt and they can go meditate in the pool.
Woody Johnson yesterday just said, we have a car for you to come in, for the first time. You made all these outlandish comments. It was a weird turmoil there. It's definitely not a week you can lose if you're the stable Bill. The thing the Bills do have going for them, whether you like them, love them, hate McDermott, love Bean, wherever you're at, they are stable. everything's together in terms of like their organization and the vision. Whether you like the vision or like the coach, it's up to you. But the vision itself has always been clear. So the Bills are going to have a clear path to knowing what they can do in a game. Whether you think the coach makes good in-game decisions doesn't really matter. But the vision of the game, the vision of the play, the vision of the players is all on the same page with your head coach, defensive coordinator, GM to ownership. So the stability that the Bills bring, and it's the reason that most people that like McDermott don't want change, is because of that vision, the stability, what they've done. Some of that stuff really hopes it matters. If it matters, you really hope it matters this week. This is the week you care about that kind of stuff, to where they're stable, they're focused, they're ready to lock in the division again. So to have a commanding position, now having a road victory over the Dolphins and Jets, you're in commanding position. 3 straight road games, 2 really good teams, division winners most likely. Like, this wasn't going to be an easy stretch. You need to finish these 3 road games, which is the hard. I don't care what the rest of the schedule says. This is the hardest stretch of the season by far. You need to at least go 1-2 in it and be 2-2 on the road to start the season with 4 technically hard road games. Like going, 4-2, 4 of them on the road. It's a pretty good start. Like, ultimately you want to win as many home games as you can and maybe go a little bit over 500 on the road, and you're a division top 3 seed. So ultimately the Bills need to go 2-2 here on the road, taking off 2 road conference or division opponents. Should have beaten the Texans, didn't come out against the Ravens, shouldn't have won that game. Should have been able to take the Texans. They're in their own world of injury problems now. We'll see if they start to falter down the stretch, but they pretty much should have the 2 or 3 seed locked up for the most part. They don't. I mean, that division's terrible. So ultimately, Kevin, the Bills need to be the stable organization and be the stable front and make a huge commanding lead and get another offensive weapon in a fold for the Bills to go out and really make a play to be the league's 2 or 3 seed in the AFC playoffs.
Well, what do you have for a score prediction? Because not gonna lie, if the Bills are injured, right? Like, if they can't get healthy in time and they're missing guys like Khalil Shakir, Ed Oliver, Taron Johnson, maybe even James Cook, I can't pick the Bills. I think this is a bad recipe when you combine those corners with that defensive line and just how the Bills receivers are not getting open. I need everyone to be healthy for this game to go right for the Bills. If they're not, then I'm taking the Jets. So, I mean, going back to the game plan, should we assume that we're going to get at least...
I would assume we're going to get most of them because we did in the game plan. So I would assume let's keep it consistent at least for now, and assume that you're getting Shakir, you're getting Samuel, you're getting the roster for the most part. Whether Austin Johnson plays or not, I don't know. But for the most part, let's assume the roster for the most part is ready to go, and most of them should be.
Yeah, you get that extra day of rest. So let's stay optimistic because, like you said, we did that for constructing the game plan, even though I think it stays the same whether Shakir's in or not. Like, you need to live in the middle of the field and just nickel and dime your way. So that being said, I think it's going to be close no matter what. I'll take Buffalo 24-21.
Yeah, I was along the same lines, actually. I have 23-17 Buffalo in this game. I think that they're going to win a 1-score game on the road. We're not factoring their turmoil, their offensive mess. Breece Hall's not getting going at all. Their offensive line, they're missing Morgan Moses, who's a good right tackle. He's out. They're running a rookie. He didn't play very well. They're not run blocking at all. Breece Hall's not. People are very mad at Breece Hall. They're giving Braylon Allen carries. So ultimately, like, their offense is just as big of a mess, hence the head coach getting fired and firing the defensive side of the ball instead. So will that do you expect them to be as good as normal? Do you expect them to be happier? Do you expect them to be more pissed off? The defense might have a showing where it's like, it wasn't our fault, so screw you guys. So we don't really know how they're going to react to what the situation is. Does Mosley play? Does their nickel play? Now the middle of the field's wide open if you're missing their nickel and their best linebacker. So there's definitely some things on both sides between their coaching move, which is underrated here. Will that give them a boost? If it will, you may be right. The Bills it may not be a great matchup. Or will they go the other way with it? And people are like, I disagreed with that move. It should have been a move on the offensive side. Like, you don't know how these are humans. Like, we don't know how this is going to be. This isn't a game simulation, and you can just swap out a person for a person. Like, we don't know. Like, inside the building, there could be big turmoil. People seem confused. They want nothing but heads to roll here. And the defensive side might be saying, okay, we lost our head guy. Why did Aaron Rodgers get to choose who left? There could be some contention, period. So maybe there's not, but I'm going to assume that the Bills are going to be the more stable. I just can't predict them to score more than 17 points on the Jets side. They just haven't really done it all season.
Yeah, this could really go one way or the other. Like, I don't think this is going to be a Jaguars game where the Bills walk out of their 47-10 victors. So, like I said, a lot of this depends on the injury reports that we get throughout the week, because if I don't like that injury report, this is a bad recipe here for the Bills and a good recipe for the Jets. And you're right, they could get that boost from firing Robert Saleh, even though I don't think that he was a problem. He was probably the scapegoat from Rodgers. Did you see the report that said that Saleh was thinking about firing Hackett, and then when Rodgers heard about that, he said, okay, let's just fire Saleh?
Yeah. Well, the defensive guy is the head coach. Like, it's his defense. Like, Albright was calling his defense, like, literally. Like, would you call McDermott? Like, I don't know. I would assume that if you elevated Bobby Babbage Jr. to the head coach of the Buffalo Bills temporarily, like, you took out like the head coach, who's the defensive side. He didn't have anything to do with the offense side. That was Aaron Rodgers at this stage, Aaron Rodgers and Nate Hackett. So, I mean, we'll see. Like, we'll ultimately see how that all turns out. As we don't know. I think that this is a situation to where a bad team firing their coach and then beating another mediocre team when they have a bye week. So sometimes you get this fake boost because teams are always firing their coaches on long weeks in terms of extra rest, like a Thursday night game, or on a bye week. So you get that extra bonus, and, you know, players may like the situation. This is a completely different side. This is a completely different scenario where we don't know how the players inside the building are going to act. Like, when Rodgers apparently got a call on Monday night and then the head coach is gone instead. This is a weird situation. This isn't a normal. The guy got escorted out. If you don't think that there's at least half the team or more that are pro Saleh, you're probably wrong. I don't know what percentage of the roster is pro Saleh, but I bet it's more than we are saying. Especially in the scenario of what happened and when it happened. Now at the end of the season, when you're basically out of the playoffs anyways. This is a weird scenario. So we'll see how their whole team reacts. Their defensive players react. Then the defense could be mad at the offense. Everybody could be mad at Rodgers. Maybe the offense plays better. We don't know. I can't see why the offense would change. Aaron Rodgers is banged up. The O-line's banged up. They've always had issues on the O-line, even though they've reconstructed it every year. They're not running the ball very well with Breece Hall, who's one of my favorite running backs. There's a lot going on there, Kevin. We don't know which way they're going to take it this week. I got to have the Bills win. I got to have the Bills putting this division to bed, or at least have a commanding lead as Tua comes back in a couple of weeks. Bills are going to have a pretty big home game against the Dolphins to really make sure they clinch the division early. And this game is a long way. They can't all be 3-3 in this division. It's a big game.
I guess the final thing I'll say is this is a huge game from the standpoint. If you can get to 4-2, have that commanding lead in the AFC East, I think that would bode well for you. You come back home to face the Titans, who I think they are going to be a little bit better coming out of the bye, but the Titans aren't one of the better teams in the NFL. So you like your chances against Tennessee at home. There's a realistic opportunity. By the way, I checked the weather. It's supposed to be like 70 and sunny on October 20th. Yeah. Good. So there's a very good chance that the Bills could be 5-2 going to, is it Seattle that following week?
After what? After the Jets game?
No, it goes Tennessee, then Seattle, then Miami, right?
Yep, correct.
So if they can be 5-2, I think anyone would have signed up for that at the beginning of the season. But if they drop to 3-3, yeah, you could still beat the Titans and go to 4-3, but you see how tight this rope is already. So that's why you don't want to make it any harder on yourself. You know, we don't want to be sitting here in November and say, oh, well, the Bills are going to rip off 5 straight wins and it's going to come down to week 18. As cool as that was last year, that was stressful. We don't need to go through that again. Don't make it that hard on yourselves. Go take care of business, get to 4-2, come back home and play the Titans.
Yeah, going to 5-2 is a big thing. Like, if they would be 5-2, you can act like we were thinking we're going to be 6-1. I even had, and you know, I predicted a strong schedule. This is a super hard 3-game stretch.
5-2 would be really good considering,
it's a great stretch
over those first 7 games.
Jets and Miami road games. You were looking at those preseason road games. Baltimore, road Houston. Like, you couldn't possibly think they were going 4-0 in that stretch. Going 2-2 in that stretch is what you needed to be. That's your hardest stretch of the year by far. Those are 2 road division games mixed with 2 division winners. Like, you needed to go 2-2 in that. I guess you could say I'd rather beat the Texans and lose to the Jets. Like, why? Like, you need to always make sure the seeding at the end of the year, you don't know what the path is going to look like. Being 2 or being 3, like, hasn't really mattered traditionally. Being sometimes 4 is even better because you play, the path could be different. The 1 might not be as good as the 2. The 2-3 game always seems to be better. Like, there's so many ways to break it down of like what seeding you want to be. I'm not going to play that game as it mattering. You need to take care of business and be a top 3 seed or 4, I guess, if you're going to be that seed. I think that, I guess, with the Texans and Ravens loss, and I guess the Chiefs are streaking, like, you need to make sure you clinch the 4 seed. Like, that is the first goal, not the Baltimore game in September. Getting the 4 seed and winning your division again and putting yourself in a home playoff game against the rest, and then worry about seeding at the end of the year. That's what you need to do. And going 2-2 against these road games isn't great. It's not ideal. Like, 3-1 probably was preferred. We all know that. And then obviously winning the 2 home games, which they did do that. Yeah, sure. Ultimately, you wanted to be, in there at 5-1 going into the Tennessee game, but 5-2 after beating Tennessee, being 3-0 at home, 2-2 on the road. That is what you were looking forward to doing with what you were transitioning from this roster. That is what anyone would. If the Bills win back-to-back and you're 5-2, I'm not going to believe that you wouldn't have signed off. I'm not going to believe it. Everyone would have signed off on 5-2. Hope for 6-1, but everybody would have signed off on 5 or 2. If I gave you that contract right now in August, and I said, Kevin, they're going to be 5-2 going to Seattle, I'm sure you would have signed it.
Oh, yeah.
So, well, we really appreciate everybody tuning into both all Thad and all of his insight inside the team and inside the locker room. We appreciate Kevin holding down the floor, and then obviously into our game plan. Devonte Adams trade talk. Rewind that. Check out the Devonte Adams segment. We really think that the Bills are interested in this. I don't think this is just one of those. The Bills check in on everything. It's a position of need. They're borderline having receiver injuries right now, and I wouldn't be shocked to see them make a move in the near future. They need to make the financials work. Who do they trade? Which receivers which receiver do they trade? Which do they trade Elam? There's so many things. We talked about that all segment about 15 minutes ago. So rewind, check that segment out. To our show sponsors, the Summit Center, Best Autism Care in Western New York, and the Larson-Timko and Dave Dengler, Larson-Timko Funeral Home. We really appreciate everybody, and Monster Energy, to the big major show sponsor of the entire network. We really appreciate that as well. But it's 11:20 on the East Coast. We got some editing to do. We got some clips to cut up for you guys. We really appreciate the roaring chat. We went 2 hours here on a Wednesday night. Let us know if you like this time slot, guys. Chat in right now. Do you like a later time slot? Does that work for you? We know there's other shows out there. Cover One does good work. We know they're releasing their shows. We know everybody's Wednesday's a pretty busy day around the Bills Roundtable in terms of AFC East Roundtable. We know there's some good shows out there. Dan Mitchell, my guy. So Kevin, leave us with some final parting thoughts.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we have almost 1,000 live viewers in here, and we're approaching 11:30 on the East Coast. So that's pretty cool. We were thinking that when we had this later start time, I was like, it's a work day, school night. People might be trying to go to bed early, but this might be a good time slot. So if you guys like that, let us know. We always take feedback, and then obviously you can watch us on the playback. But if you like that later start time, we'll definitely take it into consideration.
There you go. I don't know. He might be talking about you, but he's he's one of our favorites. So we really appreciate you, Dan. Thanks for tuning in.
Both of us.
But seriously, let us know. Like, chat us in, DM, hit us up anywhere you can. Leave the comment section, Twitter, wherever you can. Let us know. Do you like the time slot? Like, obviously, if you're going from your Cover One show over to us, or vice versa, or whoever else is airing live, that would mean a lot to us. Where's Lee? Yeah, Spen, you've watched my shows for years. So it's good to see you. I know you're probably checking out some good Cover One content over there. But dig it. Cole digs it. No pun intended, I hope. But yeah, absolutely. If you guys want to let us know what you think of the time slot, that would mean a lot to Thad Brown. We really appreciate what Thad was able to do here for us.
Oh, I got one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, but my grandma just got back from Punta Gorda. Her and my great aunt were down there to celebrate my great uncle's 90th birthday party. And while they were down there, my other cousins were there, and they were saying that they have a group of Bills fans down there. And I don't know exactly where they watch the games, but they all hang out. And they said that they stumbled upon the Going Deep Buffalo podcast, and it is their favorite podcast. So we have fans down in South Florida, and I thought that was the coolest thing.
Shout out to South Florida. Yeah, definitely. Shout out to I've seen that before, Kevin. I've been out and about in the market, and in terms of like out and getting in a restaurant, people say they've loved the segment we've had. So really appreciate everybody tuning in to what we're able to bring you. But seriously, let us know. This is about you guys too. We like the interaction. It isn't just about my personal thoughts and why I think the Bills are going to win or not win. I definitely would like you guys to tell us, do you like the new time slot? Do you want us to go later? If that works for everybody, you know, we'd be more than happy to kick off some stuff live, maybe after you put the kids to bed or you wind down more yourself before bed. Let us know, and we'll maybe kick it off a little bit later so everybody can enjoy for your tuning pleasure. But we got some editing to do, we got some work to do. I got some stats to pull, I got some trade talks to look up, I got some sources to inquire within, got some work to do. But we really appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll be live Wednesday at this stage, and we'll let you know. As always, you know, our normal show time's 8 p.m., but we'll let you know if we do go a little bit later on starting in the future. So we'll definitely keep that in mind. But from Kevin, that's Kevin. And thank you to Thad Brown, WROC Sports Director, giving his insight as well. Buffalo Kickoff Live. Check that out before every game. You know, that's a really cool segment to see what's going on inside the locker room. But that's really cool to see what the Bills need to do to get back on track. Will the Bills make a move for a receiver? And if any breaking news happens, I don't know what's going to happen yet, but if anything happens, we'll bring you some live coverage of our reactions and our thoughts of that as well as that comes out. But I would expect it to be more closer to the deadline, but no one says it can't happen tomorrow. But from Kevin, that's Kevin. We'll be back at you next Wednesday. We'll check you guys out on the flip side.